Within the empire there were two dukes, Schwetz, the lord of the battlefields, and Clyde, who had unrivaled power in trade and diplomacy. Their alliance ensured control over trade, giving them influence comparable to that of the imperial family itself. Despite their strong friendship, 10 years ago, the Duke of Clyde and his wife fell into a long sleep after falling off a cliff when their carriage plunged into the sea. Upon learning of what had happened to his close friend, Duke Schutz rushed to the scene and discovered the bodies of the Duke and his wife, with their child's clothes lying nearby. However, the northern part of the area remained untouched and no trace of the missing child was ever found, leaving Duke Schutz in dismay. 10 years had passed since that tragic event, and finally, the Dukes met again. Schutz declared that he intended to take the child under his guardianship. As in the original story, Duke Schutz discovered the protagonist, Damien, and the girl kept her promise by allowing him to meet his family. Thanks to this, she will no longer be kicked out of the shelter, and 4 years later, Damien is preparing for new challenges. He will go to war with Duke Schutz, find peace, and meet the main character, Ashabel, who will change his destiny. The Duke is now confirming his intention to take the child under his guardianship, leaving him with Damien, as if creating a new family. One of the servants asks the Duke whether the girl will become his adopted daughter, but the man replies that this is not so. He is going to make her his daughter-in-law, which surprises the main character and leaves her perplexed. She only wanted to change the future where she could be thrown out on the street, and never expected that her role would become much more important and difficult. Recently, a man observed the children and noted their good conditions, emphasizing the care given to them at the shelter. The maid confirmed this, adding that children take first place, after which the man decided to choose this particular child. The era was a time of abundance. Money flowed like water, and the empire won victories in both large and small wars, strengthening its power. Aristocrats, with considerable resources to spend, found a way to demonstrate their wealth and generosity by adopting war orphans. The official version seemed noble, but the main character, observing the shelter worker, understood that this was only a facade concealing the true motives. Children were fed and cared for only so that they looked beautiful and could satisfy the expectations of wealthy aristocrats. The directors selected orphans solely based on their appearance, and one day a girl noticed the baby and asked why she was alone and crying, and where her mother was. At that moment, the main character realized that she herself had once been one of those children, raised for the sake of external impressions. However, the director overlooked an important fact. Her mother was a famous thief who left a noticeable mark on the history of the empire. Although the mother was caught stealing from the Grand Countess and put into eternal sleep, no one dared touch her daughter, considering it dangerous. On the day the girl was returned to the shelter for the third time, she understood the whole situation after the accident and realized that the world around her resembled the plot of a book. In this world, things appeared as if from nothing, and people could be controlled easily just by touching them. In a past life, she had tried to make such ideas a reality, and among the vague memories, she remembered how much joy it had brought her. Having come to terms with the past, the girl realized that this was a fortunate coincidence that gave her a new perspective and understanding. She had one question left, and among the many books, only this novel clearly reminded her of it, although the title remained elusive. In any case, the girl was glad that she knew the future. At that moment, the director entered the room, and the heroine watched him, trying to understand his intentions. She can tell from his appearance that he has probably lost all his money gambling again, and she feels he should avoid games where the odds are against him. Meanwhile, the main character ponders what event happened behind her and sees a new child who, surprisingly, is completely calm and does not show the slightest worry. The woman says that the children need to get to know each other because they have a new friend in front of them, who from today will become a part of their lives and will live with them. The child's name is Damien, and the young lady instantly understands that this boy has arrived, and that he is the child whose presence is a constant reminder that this place is full of deceit and trickery. The main male character, who will eventually overthrow the emperor, is named Damien Clyde. She previously bullied him in the orphanage, for which she was eventually expelled. She plays the role of a villain named Elida. Damien's life has been filled with misfortune and hardship from the very beginning. He has never known peace. The boy's father owned some of the best lands in the empire, and the duchy had such influence that talk of its power and status began to circulate in society. The Clyde family gradually became the center of the empire, taking over influence from the imperial family itself. And this aroused the secret envy of the emperor, who eventually decided to get rid of the Clydes. The Duke's will was reflected in his will, as if he had foreseen all events, and he handed over all the family's wealth and his possessions to his only friend Erhard, entrusting him with the fate of the inheritance. From that moment on, all envious glances were focused on Duke Erhard Schweitz and the ruler of the barren northern lands, which were teeming with dangerous monsters and were real battlefields. The aristocrats whispered, wondering whether the Duke of Schutz would really receive all the territories of the Clyde, and discussed how even distant family ties did not cancel the will. Nothing could change the Duke's will, because the will clearly designated all the lands as belonging to the Clyde family, and everyone had to come to terms with this decision. Meanwhile, the Duke was thinking that he needed to find a child with black hair and blue eyes, like the elder Clyde, because he was the one who would continue the family line. And even though the forest around is teeming with monsters, the Duke is certain this boy will survive. The protagonist recalls all the events and experiences associated with him. She realizes that even though the boy was once a slave and treated like an animal, he is actually the main male character whose fate is important to the story. Despite everything, he will survive, although in the novel it was described that he had to go through many trials. And the heroine did not expect that everything would be so difficult. She herself was quite small in stature, but when she noticed Damien, she realized that he was even smaller than her and looked extremely fragile and vulnerable. At this time, the director of the shelter addresses the children, explaining that the newcomer needs to be told about the rules of life in the shelter and what is important for him to know. However, everyone was silent, and someone noted that the shelter was already overcrowded, and they had brought in a new boy again, increasing the number of mouths to feed. A red-haired boy declared that as the number of children grew, the food portions would become smaller. His name was Carson, and he was the head of the orphanage, authoritative and strict. He turned to the new boy, telling him that the most important thing for him was to obey his elders, and demanded that he look him straight in the eye, confirming that he understood the rules. Someone complained to the senior about the newcomer's looks, but the red-haired youth replied that his appearance was also not impressive, and suggested that they stretch their arms a little in the morning to relieve tension. The main character understood that all this would lead to trouble, because she herself had previously helped Carson's gang to bully Damien, which led to her expulsion from the orphanage. After that, she experienced a long period of loneliness, as if she had plunged into an eternal sleep, and now she decided that in this life she would definitely help Damien survive. At this time, Carson approached her with an offer to join him, but the girl refused, deciding not to interfere in his games and stay on the sidelines. Carson noticed that she always agreed and wondered why she was refusing now, and the girl explained that Damien looked too weak to interfere. When the heroine looked into Damien's eyes, she felt a slight surprise, and Carson noted that the boy really looked useless and weak, not inspiring respect. The girl remembered how someone had once called her the daughter of a thief and ordered her to leave immediately, and these memories made her shudder. At this time, the director entered the room and announced that it was time to prepare for dinner, calling on all the children to perform their duties and reminding them of discipline. The teacher also demanded that everyone go about their business, and the children obediently went to carry out their assignments, and one of the girls suggested that her sister go with her. The main character agreed, and realized that Carson's bullying of Damien was just beginning, and if she did not intervene, the outcome would be tragic for him. From now on, if she pretends not to notice and doesn't interfere, few will be able to avoid trouble and a bad end except Damien himself. The girl went into the kitchen, started washing potatoes, and realized that this life didn't really belong to her, and a lot depended on the main character. The boy is truly the main character in this story, and he is destined to overcome difficulties, and the girl was thinking about what she would do when she left the orphanage and gained freedom. She understood that the young man would cope with the difficulties, because he would just be beaten a little, and Damien's look, which she remembered, left a strong impression. She remembered a lot of people who bullied others, and saw it all end very badly, which made her be careful. After some thought, the girl approached one of the doors, deciding to help just once, and then no longer interfere with the protagonist's fate. She knocked, and a young man with red hair opened the door, ready to greet her and find out why she had come. He looked at Alita in amazement, not believing that it was really her in front of him and not someone like the director, and this scared him a little. The girl watched what was happening with curiosity, and the young man pointed to the boy sitting by the bed, asking what she thought about what was happening. He noted that perhaps she was not seeing how a newcomer was being trained, which resembled something like a welcoming ceremony for a new student. He then asked Alita if she wanted to hear something funny, gently lifting the protagonist to his feet to demonstrate the joke. He talked about how he mistook him for a girl, but in fact it turned out to be a boy, and it was funny because his face looked incredibly cute. Elida noted that it still looked better than his own expression, to which the red-haired youth frowned and asked what she was even talking about. The girl explained with a slight smile that it was a joke and that the director was looking for him. Carson wondered why this woman needed him so suddenly. The red-haired boy turned to the newcomer, telling him that he was lucky today, after which he left him alone and left the room. Elida approached the young man and asked with interest if everything was okay with him, observing his behavior. The red-haired guy closed himself off, and the girl was slightly scared, realizing that he would soon have difficulty opening up. She handed him an ointment she had secretly taken from the principal's office, explaining that it would help ease the pain. But the young man waved it off, claiming it was useless, since he could still be beaten again before the ointment took effect. Elida watched him in surprise, realizing that any resistance only escalated the violence and danger. She was surprised that the child already knew a simple way to soften the consequences of violence, as if it were a common practice for him. The girl insisted that the ointment was still better than nothing and handed him the product, reserving for him the right to use it later on his own. As Elide left the room, she realized that she had thought she was already familiar with all of Damien's suffering from the book. But seeing a boy who looked like herself made her feel something new. Suddenly, her breath caught in her throat, as if emotions had taken over her entire body. After a while, the director turned to the children, giving instructions. He demanded silence during meals and that no one should talk, and Elida wondered if the young man had missed a meal since he was out of sight. She knew that if he skipped dinner, he would remain hungry until the morning. At that moment, the young man sitting next to her noticed this and spoke. He asked if the girl was not going to eat the bread, whether he could eat it instead of her, observing her reaction. Elida apologized to Tommy, but noted that he should not eat her bread, explaining her motives. She decided to leave it for later, realizing that she did not know whether the young man would eat the bread or not, and this remained in her thoughts. Sometime later, she came back into the room and realized that it was time to clean the kitchen and it became her responsibility. The girl noticed that she was overly worried about the guy, and he himself was not in the bedroom, which made her think. It occurred to her that if he was not there, then where could he be? And then someone turned to Elida with a question about her actions. She was asked if she was looking for a ghost, and turning around, she saw Carson standing behind her. She explained that she was simply checking to see if Betty had returned, and Carson doubted it, but noted that there were more interesting things to do than look for ghosts. Elida guessed that he was talking about Damien, and Carson's friend, meanwhile, asked if he was really talking about him. He overheard a conversation with the director and learned that the boy had previously been a slave and had dealt with monsters in the dark, which seemed incredible. Carson approached Elida, asking if she was interested in this little boy, hinting at his unusual abilities. Elida understood that Carson punished almost all the children, but this one was special, and showing interest in him was considered dangerous. Anyone who showed any attention to him was taking too much of a risk, so she replied that there was no interest and claimed that he had probably gone to the warehouse. The red-haired boy noted that access to the warehouse was restricted to teachers only and wondered why the boy would go there, while Elide suggested that they might be keeping a special eye on him. She remembered seeing him enter there with his assistants, and there was indeed a lot of tasty stuff in the warehouse, and given his skills and appearance, it might make sense. Elida understood that beautiful children were useful to the orphanage, and Damien, having caught the monster, had incredible skills, and this explained his special position. So he wasn't forced to do the cleaning. She realized that Damien wasn't working because he had his own boss, something Carson hadn't suspected. The young man asked the girl if she hadn't seen that the boy couldn't even move in front of them, and Elida realized that this was typical for newcomers. She asked if this meant that Carson was stronger, and he answered in the affirmative, confirming his superiority. He then suggested going to the warehouse, but Elida insisted that Carson wait and handed him the bread from her purse, explaining that she had left it especially for him. The guy was embarrassed and asked why she had acted so unexpectedly, after which he sheepishly agreed to eat the bread. A little while later, the young lady headed outside, feeling uneasy and thinking that perhaps Carson was being scolded and was unable to defend himself. At that moment, one of the women actually raised her voice, expressing indignation and rage that someone had dared to take the food. The young man quickly explained that he had not taken anything, and that he had been told that Damien was there, but the woman sternly demanded that he be quiet and asked what kind of bread he had in his hands. Elida instantly realized that she had been meaning to give this bread to Damien, and now the moment had been well taken advantage of. The girl looked around, wondering where the boy could be, and the words of other children about his courage and perseverance came to mind. They said that this poor fellow had once been a slave, and yet he had managed to survive in the darkness, facing a monster that many thought was insurmountable. The main character anxiously wondered if this was really how it was, because she really didn't want the guy to be there alone, in the midst of danger. In the original story, the Duke asked young Damien if he could wield a sword, as his skills seemed astonishing and unusual for his age. The young man then replied that he had no choice but to learn how to use a sword in order to survive in the pitch darkness. Elide thought it seemed like a typical cliché about the hero's growth, but now, as she approached the boy, she felt concern for him. With a slight smile on her face, she noted that he could get hurt, and wondered if the young man realized how difficult it would be if he caught a cold. The girl also knew that Carson's group had been caught by the teacher, and so today the boy would be able to rest in peace, inviting him to return with her. Damien believed that even if he was caught, it was temporary, and tomorrow he would find himself back in that place, and it was more convenient and safer for him here than going back there. The girl gradually realized that this child's life had been nothing but a tragedy up until now, that he had locked himself in his deep, dark, inner darkness. His loneliness was so painful that he found a strange comfort in it, and it was probably for this reason that he trained so hard with the sword. Elida wondered what kind of person would voluntarily choose loneliness and darkness, dedicating themselves to it for a long time. She decided that they would no longer be a danger to him, because the boy would soon return, and the threats that had been there would disappear forever, and she promised herself to take care of him. The girl assured herself that he was now in no danger, and therefore invited the young man to return with her to a safe place. The young man was stunned by Elida's attention and remembered how she had previously offered him a healing ointment, showing care and concern. He only quietly asked why she was doing this, and Elide understood that her intentions were sincere and she really wanted to help. She didn't know if the child would be able to understand her actions, but she couldn't allow herself to step aside, as if plunging into an eternal sleep and leaving him alone. Now she asked the young man to get up faster, explaining that because of her worry about him, she had not even been able to eat properly, and suggested having a snack together. The young man, hearing about food, extended his hand to Elida, and she noticed with relief that Damien did not resist, which already changed her internal feeling of security. This gesture seemed to change the course of her destiny, because he followed her, smiling, and she felt his trust returning gradually. After a short while, the girl reminded the boy to be as quiet as possible, emphasizing that everything in the garden must be done carefully and without noise. After all, the director and the teachers had gone to the casino, but there was still uncertainty. Someone might stay, and caution was necessary to avoid trouble. Then Elida placed the lamp on the table, indicating that she now needed to undress, which caused slight surprise in the young man, who was not accustomed to such demands. The girl again explained that he would not be able to wash properly in his clothes, and therefore he would need to take them off completely to use the bathroom. The young man was in slight shock, and Elida pointed out that there was hot water in the director's room, which would allow him to warm up and wash himself. She added that his body is now cold as ice, and if he catches a cold, the consequences could be serious, amputation of limbs or worse. Therefore, the girl insisted that this could not be allowed, and promised to move away if he was uncomfortable with her presence, respecting his personal space. However, the young man considered his body disgusting, remembering years of suffering and abuse, and the main character realized that he had previously lived like a slave. His body must have held many wounds, and, apologizing, the young man noted that Elida would be surprised to see his real signs of pain and suffering. The girl took his hands, gently telling him that it was not at all disgusting and should not cause embarrassment or apologies, because there was nothing shameful about it. She assured him that he should not be embarrassed or make excuses, because her attention and care were sincere, and all his fears could be gradually overcome. The girl asked the young man to hurry, since they didn't know the exact time of the director's return, and there was not a minute to lose, and although it might be inconvenient, she asked if he could wash himself. The young man nodded in agreement, and the girl said that she would find clothes for him and leave them in front of the door, suggesting that he first soak hers thoroughly in warm water and wash them. After that, she noted that everything was fine and would go to the warehouse to steal food, while the young man climbed into the bathtub and immersed himself in the water. He thought about how pleasantly warm it was, and after a while the girl again asked if he had washed himself. She also wanted to know if the guy regretted his agreement, adding that the clothes might be a little big. Although she had deliberately chosen the smallest set, the girl couldn't help but notice how cute it looked on the young man. She then suggested that he consider whether he should continue wearing the clothes while holding out a plate of food. The girl noted that the most important thing was that she managed to bring food from the warehouse while he was busy in the bathroom. The young man was slightly surprised, and the girl watched his reaction with interest and tried to understand whether he had never tried such food before. He agreed with her remark, and the girl wondered what this boy was fed as a child and how he grew up in general. Later, she asked the young man to make a sandwich, showing him how to eat it properly so that it would be tasty and convenient. The young man repeated her actions and asked if he had done it correctly, to which the girl nodded, confirming that everything was correct. He enjoyed the taste of the food, and the girl watched him and couldn't help but notice that he looked like a puppy with chubby cheeks. She then asked if he needed to comb his hair to avoid tangling. She also suggested waiting a little, since he had just come in from the cold and otherwise he might catch a cold. The main character carefully wiped his hair and noticed that he really did look like a puppy, but now his personal space had become noticeably smaller. At that moment, she noticed a scar on the young man's neck, similar to the bite mark of some creature. The young man explained that it was an old scar, and that his master had previously made him grow his hair to hide the marks. The girl remembered that there was a story in the book about a guy who had long hair in those days, and now she understood the reason. She thought about how cruel the novel had been in its depiction of young Damien, and how difficult it had been to appreciate all the events of his life. The young lady also asked if his long hair bothered him in his everyday life. She carefully pushed aside the strands of hair and realized that living according to the novel's plot would not be easy for her. At the same time, she could not help but notice how handsome the young man was, and he turned out to be even more attractive than she expected. But the girl understood that now was not the time for such thoughts, and she checked to see if he had a fever by placing her hand on his forehead. The boy said he felt only a slight warmth, and she sighed with relief that he was okay. Glad that he hadn't caught a cold, the girl led him to the bedroom. Opening the door, she declared that from now on they would sleep there. One of the residents woke up and wondered who was with her, and the girl quietly asked Betty to be careful not to wake Tommy, because nothing terrible was happening and the guy could go to bed peacefully. She looked around at the empty beds and was glad that Carson's gang wasn't there, although she wasn't entirely sure. Pointing to the beds, the girl explained that her place was by the window in the middle, and Damien's bed was by the door, initially assuming that they would sleep separately. But on the first night, she invited him to share her bed, and the young man was slightly surprised, not expecting this. The girl just told him to go faster because he wanted to sleep, and he did so, following her instructions. She thought it was the first time he had ever slept on a bed, and it looked awkward. Elida covered him with a blanket, and coming closer, she caught an unusual smell, as if he had recently washed himself. However, it didn't smell like detergent, and the girl felt a little uneasy. She wished him good night, but the young man remained silent, and she wondered if he would answer her in kind. He quietly said good night to her as well, snuggling a little deeper under the covers. The girl confirmed this and closed her eyes, wishing him a good night's sleep. Meanwhile, the young man watched her and thought that she was an incredibly special person. He wondered if her attention to him was connected with a feeling of guilt, since he was a slave and used to keeping to himself. But now, remembering everything she had done for him, he wondered if he really wasn't that disgusting. He remembered the bright and deep eyes of the young lady and realized that hope for anything for him had now practically disappeared. But in his sleep, something strange began to come to him, and when he turned around, a terrible creature appeared before his eyes, like a living nightmare. At that moment, a quiet laugh was heard, and a voice nearby reminded that one must not remain motionless. A slave must serve his master, and now he needed to fight the monster. The woman added that she had prepared something for him that would help him defeat the monster, so that defeat seemed impossible. The boy understood that there was no help to be expected from anywhere, and if he did not put the creature into a crippled sleep, the monster would take his life without hesitation. He felt the need to pull himself together, to come to his senses, because if he lost control, the outcome of events would be catastrophic for him. At this time, the main character tried to wake the young man, and gradually he opened his eyes, as if returning to reality after a terrible dream. Elida examined him carefully, trying to understand whether he was okay, whether it was just a nightmare, or whether the young man had caught a cold after all. The girl put her hand to his forehead, noting the absence of a fever, but the guy was covered in sweat, as if he had experienced something strong. Elida continued to inquire about his condition, while he, meanwhile, was still coming to his senses, slowly realizing what was happening. When the young man's gaze met Elida's, he realized that there had been practically no care for him until yesterday, even from himself. But this girl was different. She promised to bring a wet towel, and, having gathered herself, headed for the exit, concerned about his condition. The young man managed to grab her by the dress, asking her to wait, assuring her that he felt fine and was not experiencing any pain. Elida asked cautiously if he was really okay, adding that he should not overexert himself despite his assurances. Then she gently ran her hand over his head, and he noticed a strange sensation where her touch seemed both light and warm at the same time. He felt a tickling, warm feeling, as if a sun had flared up inside him, and he knew that perhaps he should admit to the pain, but he remained silent. Suddenly there was a crash, and a young man with red hair flew into the room, his face expressing anger and alarm at the same time. He looked extremely angry, demanding an explanation as to why Elida had done this and why the boy was not in the warehouse. Because of her actions, he was caught by the teacher, and now the boy could not understand if she realized what he had to go through for this. Everything happened because of this guy, and the main character tried to understand why he blamed Damien for what happened. She believed that the one who had been deceived was to blame himself, and she realized that the clock would soon ring, which meant that the teachers were already approaching. At that moment, the young man rushed towards her, exclaiming how she could do this to him, his anger and confusion filling the room. At that moment, the teacher entered the room, screaming in surprise and demanding an explanation of what the boy was doing and why he was behaving inappropriately. The young man, stunned, tried to object that it was Elida who started everything, and now she must bear responsibility for what happened. He shouted so loudly that everyone around could hear what was happening, and the teacher only asked with disbelief what kind of nonsense he was talking about. After all, every day he starts a fight himself, and among the aristocrats, his behavior evokes little interest and respect. Carson asked to believe him and insisted that they really were at the warehouse yesterday, and everything happened precisely because of Yelida's concern for Damien. The teacher asked if this was true, and the girl confirmed that yesterday, Damien had been feeling unwell and had a fever. She explained that she'd gone to get some medicine, but Carson continued to repeat that all the teachers had gone to the casino, causing the young man to feel bewildered and outraged. The girl, with tears in her eyes, insisted that this was true, and that the teachers could not leave the children alone while going to the casino, which made the situation impossible without her intervention. The woman didn't even know what to answer, and Ilita realized that it was time to put an end to it so that she wouldn't be questioned anymore, and she turned to the teacher. She asked whether the doors to the warehouse had really been open at night, and the teacher replied that the director had assigned her a certain task yesterday, so she was the last one to close the door to the warehouse, and now she was remembering the events that happened yesterday. When one man asked if everything would be okay and if they would be caught, the woman assured that there was no danger and everything was under control. She believed that there was no better place for secret meetings, but the girl insisted that she had definitely left the keys in the director's office and the warehouse could not have been opened. It seems the girl managed to lose her key, for which she sincerely apologizes. The teacher reassures her, saying everything is fine and asking her not to worry. The little girl continues to cry, blaming herself for being inattentive, so she decides to go with Carson to the principal to fix everything. However, the woman suddenly cries out, "No?" After which she pauses and does not continue her words, as if not knowing what to say next. She then turns to the boy with anger, shouting about some casino and accusing him of lying because it could have gotten Damien hurt. The young man, in turn, cries out that he has never done anything like this, trying to justify himself and defend himself. Elida is still lying, but the woman orders the guy to stop making excuses and watch her, after which he again shouts that it really is not his fault. As Carson is taken away, the protagonist realizes that he will not bother Damien for a while. After this, the young lady turns to Betty and Tommy, reminds them that they need to go down quickly to avoid getting reprimanded, and asks them to wash up and go. The girl runs up to the main character and asks what's wrong with her, not ignoring her little sister. The girl promises that she will also come down soon, and the little girl agrees, reminding her not to be late. As they walk out, the young lady looks at Damien and remembers that the teachers weren't around yesterday. The main character claims that she told him that she would protect him from the other guys, and now she is taking revenge for him. The guy is shocked, not understanding what "for him" means, and the girl sits down on the bed, calmly explaining her motives. She argues that adults should help children, and admits that she has not yet met such adults. But she turns to Damien with confidence that there will definitely be a person in his life who can be trusted. The young man wonders what will happen if he decides to trust. As if he is searching for meaning in her words, the girl replies that it will make him happier, and the guy remains silent, digesting what was said, while a red-haired young man bursts into the room and reminds Elida to come down quickly, as the director has already woken up. He warns that if they are late they will be reprimanded, so they need to go without delay. The main character runs with him, and the young man, looking at her, feels a strange and new feeling that he cannot explain. Carson is angry, thinking that it was because of the others that he ended up alone in a dirty room, but internally he wonders why the girl cares so much about Damien. He tries to understand why she took the boy's side and showed such concern for him, as if she was seeing her own brother for the first time. He's certain this feeling won't last long, because Elida will be his only one in the future. Meanwhile, the girl is preparing soup in the kitchen. After tasting it, she decides that the taste is quite good and asks Damien to ladle the soup to help her. The young man fulfills the request, and the main character notices that he has been barely responding to her lately and wonders if her lies still bother him. Although he is already accustomed to violence and difficulties, he has not yet encountered lies, and this causes him confusion. Elida carefully asks if he is still worried about the events of the morning and what happened earlier. The guy asks what she's talking about, and the girl clarifies that she's talking about how she deceived him. The young man is about to object, but the main character convinces him not to worry too much about what happened. She explains that revenge must be calculated, and a small lie was justified in this case. It's better this way than to get caught yourself, so the past shouldn't cause the young man suffering in the future. The main character asks if he understood the meaning of what was said, and the guy hears something like this for the first time, realizing that this will help him survive. He understands that he will never lose to anyone again, because now he knows how to act in any circumstances. Just as she protected him, he vows to protect her in any way possible, stopping at nothing. At this time, the director is sitting on the couch, experiencing a severe headache, wondering how she could feel so bad after the casino. She decides she needs to eat something to stay sober and gets up from the couch, heading to the kitchen. Entering there, the woman is surprised by the operation of the gangway and thinks about the strangeness of what is happening. Even if she hadn't lost and hadn't drunk so much, the situation might have turned out differently. One of the women asked the director of the shelter to look after the child until she returned, and thereby cover her debt. She explained to her uncles that it was just a new child, but in fact he was a slave with the master who would soon return. If the owner finds out that the girl was forced to work, this will create serious problems, so the woman turns to Damien. At that moment, she heard the teacher scream sharply, asking if Carson was going to come back, and when he left the room. The young man cried out in response, asking the woman to let him go, since he was not guilty of anything. Then the headmistress approached them to find out what was going on. The teacher explained what her colleagues had said. The child had been causing trouble lately, and even allegedly stole bread from the warehouse. The boy cried out that it wasn't true, and that he hadn't stolen anything. He'd gotten the bread from someone else. However, the headmistress told him to shut up, as this was not the first time he had stolen something and made noise while doing so. The woman also said that he needed additional education and then asked the teacher to leave it to her, to which she agreed. When the headmistress grabbed the boy by the arm, he thought that this couldn't be happening and he shouldn't be responsible for it alone. The young man cried out, claiming that he had actually been there too. After all, Damien had been in the warehouse too, but had managed to escape. The main character replied that that wasn't true. Damien wasn't at the warehouse that day. He was sick and stayed in her room the entire time. Carson asked Ellie why she kept lying, considering she was the one who sent him to the warehouse. The young lady approached the principal, stating that she knew very well how many children were suffering because of his bullying. The headmistress looked at the girl and remembered how she had returned to the orphanage again. The woman asked why she was there again, trying to figure out if the girl was telling the truth. All this was happening because of the little girl's despicable mother. The headmistress was perplexed as to how many times this had happened, and was indignant that she was constantly being sent back. The headmistress understood that the girl had always been quiet, but now she stepped forward. At this time, the young man with red hair screamed, begging the director to believe him that this was all a lie. The woman simply stated irritably that this was annoying and told Malin to deal with the newly arrived child herself. They were not given work, to which the teacher agreed, and the headmistress, clearly angry, left. The blonde approached Damien and said that he should go to the cafeteria first because she needed to stay there to work. The boy fell silent but still held on to the young lady's dress. She said she'd soon finish cooking and would come straight to him. The girl understood that the director limited Damien not because he singled him out, but because he had an owner. But for the other children, this would be noticeable. The situation looked bad, and the young lady asked if Damien could wait for her. But he continued to hold on to the dress, after which the teacher told him to go with her. The red-haired boy asked if he would be scolded, because the teacher hit him so hard. But he noted that the boy must be scared. The main character watched them and realized that although they were mistaken, in fact, Damien was kept away from any work. The girl decided that she needed to finish quickly and go after him. After some time, the guy was already sitting in the dining room, in the very corner of the room. The young man felt lonely, but he didn't want to become hateful to Ellie. At that moment, he heard someone's voice and, raising his head, saw the main character. The young lady asked if he was waiting for her and suggested that they go eat together. Damien asked if she was completely finished, to which the girl replied in the affirmative. The boy asked if he could eat with her, and the young lady agreed, noting that the food was very tasty today. Someone said the guy should wait, since his place was to the right of Elida. The main character thought Tommy was agitated because Carson, who always kept an eye on her, was absent. She told the guy to give in to Damien at least once today, since he had just arrived, but Tommy said he didn't want to. The young lady claimed that true gentlemen were always willing to give way to others, after which the boy wondered if this was true. He agreed and added that he would give in at least once today, because he wanted to show himself to be a real cool guy. The main character then realized that Tommy was acting like a child and invited Damien to sit next to her. to which he agreed. Tommy looked closely at the boy and noticed a kindness and naivete in his face that made him almost transparent to other people's eyes. But at that moment they heard a scream, and a moment later they realized it was Betty, who looked upset and scared. The girl cried, claiming that her doll was soaked in soup, and the main character said that Damien and Tommy could eat while she dealt with the baby. She picked Betty up and gently explained that the doll was only a little wet, so there was no need to worry. It just needs to be washed carefully, and then Sister Betty will put it in order, and everything will be like before again. Damien watched the main character leave, then turned his gaze to Tommy, gauging his reaction. The red-haired young man extended his hand, expressing his joy at meeting her, and it seemed that he was beginning to get closer to Ellie. He suggested they start getting along from now on, but Damien just turned away calmly, not responding to the gesture. Tommy realized that perhaps the boy was afraid of people and assured her that he was still a friend of the young lady, offering to establish contact. Damien asked the guy if he confirmed that he was indeed Ellie's friend and received an affirmative answer that he was her closest friend. But then the black-haired boy looked at him coldly, causing Tommy to feel a slight fear and tension. A short time later, the main character returned to the room and asked Damien if he was eating, inviting him to join her meal. The young man nodded and began to eat his portion, after which Ellie turned to Tommy, carefully observing his behavior. She asked what was wrong, and Damien gave the guy another sharp look, after which he replied that nothing special was happening. Tommy couldn't understand how anyone could think that this young man was naive, because he had a wild and unpredictable nature hidden within him. After some time, the main character watched as Damien came out of the shower, noticing that his cheeks were shining and wanted to touch them lightly. The guy looked at her, and Ellie realized that despite the desire to touch her cheeks, she needed to restrain herself, because he was just beginning to trust her. She asked if he felt better after the shower and offered to come closer, to which Damien agreed without further ado. Ellie carefully wiped his face and thought that the guy was very handsome and his hair was probably in the way, and she would like to cut it. But any aristocrat, seeing such a face, the Duke would definitely want to take him away, so it was necessary to hide the boy's beauty because Duke Schutz was supposed to become his adoptive father. The young lady then suggested that Damien go to bed, and together they headed to the room, getting ready for the night. She pointed to one of the beds and announced that from this evening on, this was where he would rest, marking the new rule. The young man asked if he would have to sleep alone, and the main character was surprised and asked if that upset him. The guy looked a little upset, and Ellie wondered if he wanted to say something, but he remained reserved. Damien simply turned around and lay down on the bed, making his decision silently, without further ado. Ellie realized that a lot had happened during the day and he was probably tired, so she headed to her bed. Before going to bed, she wished Damien good night and sweet dreams, showing her care and attention to him. The young man was silent for a moment, and then, calling her by name for the first time, he responded with a reciprocal wish for pleasant dreams. Ellie was amazed and happy, because for the first time she heard her name from this quiet and modest boy. A few words made a strong impression on her, and she felt warmth from such a simple but important thing. A little later, in the middle of the night, the young lady woke up and realized she needed to go to the toilet, carefully getting out of bed. However, when the girl looks back at the bed next to her, she realizes that there is no one there, and for a moment, she feels empty. After this, the young lady notices that Damien has disappeared and asks where he went, and the little girl with purple hair quietly answers. The little girl explains that her brother Carson has returned, which causes genuine surprise and slight confusion in the main character. Meanwhile, Damien is outside watching the whole thing, and Carson screams, remembering all the hardships he had to go through because of this guy. He looks at the young man and exclaims that he is proud that Ellie cares about him, but for the girl herself, this guy is nothing special. Damien, feeling threatened, glares sternly at Carson, who only asks why the young man is looking at him like that, and what actions he intends to take. The brunette continues to watch him closely, remembering the young lady's words that he would no longer suffer from other people's cruelty. The young man is already preparing to fight back against these villains, but suddenly a guy with red hair screams, interfering in what is happening. He claims that Ellie only cares about the weak, like himself, those who are unable to stand up for themselves. The brunette slows his movements, and the red-haired boy shouts that he himself is just one of those weaklings. This is precisely why the young lady cares for him, and not because he is special in any way or is dear to her in a special way. The boy recalls how, at their first meeting, the girl said that he looked weak, and his memories of slavery were filled with constant accusations of uselessness and stupidity. But he realizes that it was only when Carson said that he was nothing to Ellie that he felt like he was being pulled into a swamp, and everything inside him began to burn with pain and despair. The red-haired boy raises his leg, preparing to kick Damien, determined to show who's boss. He shouts at him to understand his place, because he is behaving too insolently for a slave and has gone too far. After this, he turns to the young man, claiming that he seems to have misunderstood the rules of living together in the same house. The guy grabs him and throws him into the icy lake, telling him to cool his ardor and thoughts in the cold water. As he falls into the lake, the boy repeats Ellie's name, causing slight surprise in Carson, who sees that the girl managed to catch him. The main character turns around furiously to face them and thinks about how she ran as fast as she could, fearing for Damien's life in such a frosty winter. She realizes that if Carson pushes around all the kids he doesn't like, the boy will be in danger. The girl sincerely wanted Damien to be okay, and now she wonders if Carson has gone crazy. She knew about his eccentricities, but now he was acting especially recklessly, putting an innocent child in danger. The red-haired boy tries to understand why Ellie reacts so violently to what is happening to him, and what she thinks of him in general. He remembers how she once tried to resist bullying with him and now seems strangely kind to this child. He doesn't understand why the girl shows such unusual care for this particular baby and what kind of child this really is. The young lady promises Damien that she will help him with his treatment once they return, showing care and responsibility. Carson claims that he didn't like it from the very beginning, after which he suddenly attacks the young man with his fists. He cries out that everyone around him is acting strange because of him, and is perplexed by what the girl is actually doing. The main character grabs Damien and jumps to the side, avoiding a direct collision, and Carson sees only his reflection in the water. He then loses his balance and falls into the lake, causing alarm among those around him, who ask if he is okay and can get up. Ellie argues that it's important to know when to stop, noting that the guy really can be nasty when he wants to be. After this, the young lady runs away, stating that there is no point in trying to talk to him anymore and completely ignores his attempts. The girl drags Damien along with her, and for the first time, he sees her angry and furious, not understanding what caused such anger. He wonders if it's because he's weak, or because he's simply irritating her with his behavior. The protagonist turns to Damien, asking why he had stood motionless before and had not tried to resist, demonstrating growing anxiety. The guy realizes that it is because of him that the girl is angry, and begins to ask if she considers him pathetic, and if he feels sorry for her by caring. Ellie is surprised, not understanding what he is talking about, and the young man claims that if this is so, she should not worry about him anymore. He thinks that he is used to such situations and is sure that nothing bad will happen to him. But the girl grabs him by the shoulders, showing the seriousness of her words. She asks what he is saying, and whether he really thinks that she cared about him only out of pity. Ellie apologizes for making him think that way, and for saying he looked weak by admitting his mistake. She claims that she never considered him weak, and, on the contrary, is sure that he is stronger than many around him, demonstrating true respect and recognition. The young man then tried to convince himself that he had not expected these words, although he understood that the girl cared about him, perhaps only out of pity. But when Ellie said that he was strong, it didn't suit his condition at all, and tears came to the young man's eyes. He quietly said her name, and the main character was in slight shock at that moment, wondering if she had said something wrong. The young man insisted he thought he was just annoying Ellie. Ellie then wondered why he should irritate her, and the boy simply replied that it was just that simple. Ellie said that it would be painful to endure such a situation, and suggested that he look at her directly. After this, the young lady asked him to stop crying, and the boy again asked if she hated him. Ellie wondered why she would hate him. The guy then noted that she often avoided his gaze, and the young lady asked when that was. He replied that she had spoken of pain in her heart, and the girl remembered how her heart had literally jumped when he took off his shirt. Now he claimed that this did not mean hatred, because the reason was completely different. But the young man still believed that Ellie hated him, after which the main character exclaimed that she would no longer avoid him, and the young man asked if this was true. The girl made a pinky promise and asked if he now believed her words. The guy wanted to say something, but Ellie just sighed, noting that the tears had already passed. He declared that from now on, he would always hold her hand, even during meals, and would always sit next to her. The young lady agreed and suggested that they now hold hands and sit next to each other in the dining room. She also told him that if anyone starts bullying him, he should fight back immediately and not allow anyone to treat him badly. The girl asked him not to suffer alone and to immediately tell her if something was bothering her, and they again sealed their pinky promise. Then they went inside, and the young man realized that Ellie's words were sincere. He felt happiness thanks to her, remembering that the girl once said that there was a person he could trust. He thought that with such a person he would definitely be happy, and now he realized that even in tears he felt good. If this were a real misfortune, he would not have experienced such peace and joy even in suffering. From that moment on, he wanted to be greedy for happiness. Meanwhile, the Duke was putting someone to sleep, after which he stated that they had wasted their time on empty information. It was also said that they and Auntie were leaving and moving on to the next area, while Ellie had finished healing the young man. The main character announced that the treatment was over and suggested going to bed. The young man grabbed her by the dress, and the girl asked what happened, after which he asked if they could sleep together. He explained that he often had terrible dreams. Ellie objected that the bed was narrow and would be uncomfortable, but the young man tearfully asked if it could be done. The girl realized that there was no point in resisting, because it wasn't difficult at all. The young man lay down next to her, and Ellie noticed that his mood seemed to have improved. Although she is a minor character, she was pleased to help, and remarked that they were now like brother and sister. However, the young man insisted that he was not Ellie's younger brother. The girl reminded him that he was 11 and she was 13, but the young man only slightly pushed her away and sadly looked away. Ellie wondered if he was angry, because despite his young age, he was a strong protagonist, and he might be upset by such treatment. The girl said she was joking and asked Damien not to be angry, because that's what she wanted to say. That she was warm because she was sleeping next to her, and his soul responded with embarrassment. He admitted that he felt the same. The main character smiled, noting how cute he was, and suggested that he go to bed since it was already late. They wished each other good night, and when the boy closed his eyes, he fell asleep. He dreamed of Ellie, who was helping him get dressed and telling him that everything suited him because he was handsome. The young man thanked her and realized that, thanks to her, he felt happy. The next day, Ellie reminded him that he said he had a good dream. She asked him if it hurt, since he had a fever, but the guy replied that it didn't. He didn't feel any pain at all, but the girl asked how that could be, since it wasn't noticeable in his voice. She asked him to speak honestly about his health, to which the young man replied that he had fallen ill the previous night. Ellie wondered why he hadn't said anything, and realized that she herself had been fast asleep and enjoying her sleep, considering herself a little stupid. She asked Tommy about Damien's condition, and he said that he had a high temperature and would have to stay in bed for a few days. Ellie reminded him that he needed to rest peacefully today, and the young man asked about himself. Tommy replied that she needed to work or the director would be angry, and the guy thought that he would have to break up with Ellie again. The young lady confidently declares that she will cope with all the work perfectly and will be able to quickly finish the chores and then make soup for the guy, so she invites him to close his eyes and calmly count to 100. The guy agrees to her proposal, but specifies that she must return quickly and asks if she agrees. She agrees without hesitation, mentally remarking how sweet he is before promising to return. She asks Tommy to follow the guy, but the young man only watches what is happening menacingly. Tommy, looking at him, thinks what a sly fox he is. Meanwhile, the main character is cleaning the principal's room, realizing she needs to leave so she can get the medicine. However, the woman has no intention of leaving the office and is clearly in an irritated mood today. The director suddenly turns to Ellie, exclaiming if she could clean up faster, and the young lady agrees without hesitation. She understands that any wrong action can lead to trouble, so she decides to first put the outside in order. At this time, the director notices that, despite the large number of children, the financial situation of the institution is critical. She looks at one of the nightstands and realizes that to cover the debts, she will have to sell one of the mana stones. Mana stones are special minerals that accumulate magical energy and are used by those who do not have mana themselves to perform magic. Furthermore, mana stones themselves are precious and require rare poppy seeds to create, so they sell for a very high price. The woman takes one of the stones in her hand and understands that this is truly a valuable treasure that she has been collecting for a long time, and she will never give it up. The headmistress looks at the girl with displeasure, thinking that if she were not the daughter of a thief, she could be sold profitably to pay off debts. At this moment, one of the teachers enters the room and addresses the director with a report. She recalls that, as already mentioned, because of Duke Shoots, the number of aristocrats willing to adopt orphans has significantly decreased. The woman returns the stone to its place and notes that the situation cannot continue as it is. Ever since Duke Shoots began choosing adopted children, he would visit aristocrats and inquire whether the child had black hair, but he never inquired about eye color. The aristocrats were afraid of meeting the Duke and stopped adopting children, fearing the consequences. The headmistress asks if Malene has accurately conveyed the information, and the girl replies that she spread rumors that the Duke's son is now there. To which the director nods approvingly, calling her a good girl, and the girl is slightly puzzled, turning to the director. She wonders what if they deceive the Duke and sell another child, and he finds out what will happen to them, because we are talking about Duke Shoots himself. However, the director reassures her, saying that the Duke has never personally seen this child, so he will not be able to tell whether it is real or not, and the girl had better follow instructions. The main character agrees, realizing that the Duke is already heading there to save Damien. The man, meanwhile, is with other aristocrats and plunges many servants into eternal sleep, expressing dissatisfaction with what is happening. He does not understand how they could hope to break him with the power of the aromas of medicinal herbs and demands an explanation. He declares that they have committed a sin and must now answer for it, and the woman, in despair, asks for mercy because they did not know who they were dealing with. The young man turns to the Duke, asking him to listen first, since their goal was not to plunge everyone into eternal sleep. The man claims that a sin has been committed and asks for retribution, but due to his character, he cannot ignore the request for mercy. He demands that they tell him where the child is if they don't want to end up in an eternal sleep. The woman realizes that the slave is actually the Duke's son and reports that he is in an orphanage. It was an orphanage run by a friend of hers, and she thought the child would be better off there than in a harsh home. The Duke swings his sword and asks if they really want to fall into eternal sleep so badly. However, someone catches his eye and he stops, wondering what happened. The young man claims that it seems the two are not lying, as he received the message a few days ago. It says that the child they are looking for is in a nearby saint's orphanage. The Duke asks why this was reported only now, when all the shelters of the Empire had already been examined, and the man replies that it is only called an orphanage. In reality, it is a place where orphans are taken to do all sorts of dirty work. The Duke then puts a sword to the young man's throat, and he claims that there are many children there who are adopted for money and literally sold, so he wanted to tell him after confirming the information. However, the Duke at this time only claims that he wants to plunge the boy into a cured sleep right there. The young man then asks the Duke for forgiveness, but he only turns to the guy on the ground and asks if they sent the child to the saint's orphanage, to which he cries out that everything is correct. The Duke then claims that he will receive his punishment later, so let the guy send a message to the shelter that they are going to visit right now. But then he still remembers something and claims that first we need to deal with these two, after which he plunges them into eternal sleep. At this point, the headmistress only screams that they are already on the edge, and now sick children have appeared. She also cries out who could possibly feel well after falling into the lakes in such weather. The woman understands that the Duke will arrive very soon, and she cannot show him the sick child. Therefore, First of all, it is worth giving him at least a cheap medicine to show him in good shape, and it's a pity, but you will have to sell at least one mana stone. However, when the woman looks at her collection, she is shocked to realize that one of them is missing. Then he asks how this happened. Meanwhile, the main character is wringing out the rag, and she wonders how high the boy's temperature is. After which she claims the wet towel has become warm. So she goes and soaks it in cold water again. The guy then turns to Ellie, and he asks her not to leave because he doesn't want to be alone, and the main character claims that he has such a high temperature, to which the young man replies that he doesn't care. Ellie then thinks that he will soon fall asleep, so she thinks that she will wait a little. After which she also realizes that it seems like he has gotten much better thanks to the energy of the mana stone that she stole, and who knew that the young man would become so seriously ill. The girl understands that Carson's condition is also bad, but Damien's body was initially weak, and in general, Carson and his condition should not worry her. At this point, the guy leans against the young lady's hand and says that it is cool. Ellie then thinks how it was possible to torture such a kind and innocent child. After which the girl realizes that he has finally fallen asleep and also thinks that she needs to quickly go and come back, because it would be good to grab something light to eat. Well, then the woman turns to the girl and asks what she is doing there. After which he repeats his question about the main character and thinks about what the director is doing there. But then she just turns around and claims that Damien is sick, so she is taking care of him and was now going to change the water. However, the woman pulls a magic stone out of her pocket and asks what it is then. The young lady then, with a smile on her face, realizes that she thought the woman wouldn't notice if she took the one that was lying in the corner, after which she claims that she doesn't understand what she's talking about and that Carson was just dragging it around. However, the woman only claims that now the girl also steals. But how can one be so impudent, and has she really taken after her mother so much? The young lady then asks why she is talking about this, and the woman replies that it is obvious and the girl said that she would live quietly, so she decided to leave her, but in the end she repaid her favor with theft. After which she claims they're using this opportunity to correct her habit. Then she takes a swing, and the protagonist closes her eyes. However, after the blow, the woman sees Damien standing in front of the girl, and she is a little surprised. The young man tells the woman not to hit her. After all, if she hits Ellie, he won't let it go so easily. After that, the guy just breathes heavily. The principal asks what he's doing and why he's interfering. She also recalls how the woman who handed her the child told her never to try to hit him. After all, if she hesitates, he will attack regardless of who the enemy is. At this time, one of the teachers also contacts the headmistress and claims that a message has arrived about this, that Duke Schutz will arrive soon, and the woman screams, "Is it really that fast?" After which she tells her to quickly make the children clean up and change their clothes, and also bring all the children with black hair and blue eyes to her office. The woman also claims that they have not yet prepared and will talk later, because then the girl will take responsibility for what she did. However, the main character grabs the woman by the dress and asks what about Damien. She claims that the guy has black hair and blue eyes, and the woman is just interested. Does she really need to show this child to the Duke just to embarrass herself? After which the young lady wants to object, but at the same time, the young man begins to collapse. And the main character, in shock, grabs him and asks if the guy is hurt. But the director just smirks and claims that the sick child needs to rest, so it's better for the girl to take care of him. The guy then turns to the young lady, and she insists that everything is fine and she will definitely help him meet his family. At this time, the Duke heads to the orphanage, after which he is greeted by the teachers. The man understands that this place is far from the city center and completely isolated. Therefore, it is impossible to get there without horses and a carriage, and it can also be said that it is a good environment for children. But now he asks where the director is, and he did inform about the visit in advance. One of the women claims that since he contacted her in a hurry, it was passed on to the director too late, and now she is on her way there, so let him wait a little. At this time, the man asks what is going on with the child, and one of the women understands that the director told them to keep their mouth shut, so they cannot answer honestly. At this time, the Duke looks at the teachers and realizes that there is complete chaos there, after which he tells them to stop and he himself will then find the child. After which he heads to the orphanage and says that this is the worst time of year, because little children live in such a cold place. The young man replies that he thinks so too. Meanwhile, the Duke insists that if their words about Clyde's child being there turn out to be a lie, then the guy should immediately get rid of everyone, to which the young man agrees. Well, then the man turns the corner, and the main character crashes into him. Afterwards, she says it hurts. The man then wonders if it is really a child, after which he leans over the window and apologizes. He also asks if she can become one, after which the young lady smiles and thanks him. The Duke understands that she has such bright energy, but the young lady at this time claims that she is in pain and therefore has difficulty getting up. But the girl asks who they are, and the young man who is following the Duke leans towards her and realizes that it seems the girl does not know that he is the Duke. He then turns to the little girl, but she only asks if they came there to adopt a child. The man then replies that this is true, and the young lady says that that's it, and claims that the children have now been gathered in the principal's office. And he is looking for a child with black hair and blue eyes, because they collected 5 of them there. The Duke then claims that a similar director is still there, and the young man next to him claims that she decided to stall for time by allegedly not being there, but he still does not understand why. The man then says that who knows, but he already feels bad, after which he turns to the little girl, and he thanks her for saying this, to which the young lady bows and says that there's nothing to say, after which she says goodbye. The Duke then says they should go. The young man agrees, but when he turns around, he thinks the girl is a strange child. And for the first time, he sees a man who has come face to face with the Duke and has not cried. Well, then he remembers there was another one like that, and that was a man who didn't even blink when he looked at the Duke. But all that is in the past. Now the director of the shelter greets the Duke and thanks him for visiting their shelter. At this time, the man asks what kind of children these are, and the woman, pointing to these crying children, asserts that these are children with black hair and blue eyes, just like the one he is looking for, so among them, one is definitely the one he is looking for. The woman then also turns to the children and asks in shock what is wrong with them, since they are not so whiny. And the Duke understands that Clyde said that his son's mana is there, so if he is there, the stone will react, but as expected, this is not the case. After which he turns to Anta and claims that this looks like a lie, so let him put this woman into a crippling sleep. The headmistress is then shocked and asks what the Duke is saying, after which she screams at him so that the Duke can save her, and the one he is looking for is definitely one of these 4. The man then wonders if she is talking about 4, and also understands that the child he encountered definitely said so. He's looking for a child with black hair and blue eyes, but they collected 5 of them there. After which he claims that one thing is missing. The woman asks what he said, and the man just pulls his sword out of its sheath and wonders if she's really gonna pretend to the end. After which he puts a sword to the woman's throat and asks where the child she is hiding is, but if she deceives him, she will immediately lose her life. A little while later, the main characters hear a noise outside, and she understands that, judging by him, the Duke will soon come there and also everything is going according to the original as she wanted. But the girl thinks why she is a little sad, but she still understands that for Damien, this is a good event. After which the young lady turns to the boy and asserts that he will not get sick anymore. The young man then asks what she is talking about, and the girl insists that she did promise, which will help him meet his family. But at that very moment, the Duke runs into the room, and the young man wonders if he really does have a family. After which he also wonders who this person is. Ante, observing the Duke, understands that this is the first time since the lady fell into a crippled sleep that he sees the Duke behaving so emotionally, and he thought that he would never see such behavior again. At that moment, the man came closer to the boy, and he understands that he heard that it was a boy, but he was so thin. He also sees that there was a girl next to him, and he also understands that this is the same child with whom he encountered earlier. But the young man immediately rises from the bed and defends the young lady. The main character then becomes a little worried. He screams that he can't get up, but the young man only tells the guy not to look at Ellie with such eyes. After all, he wouldn't stand idly by if anyone tormented Ellie. The man then realized that the child was very much like an animal. Then he asks who he's planning to protect with a body like that. But at that moment, something strange happens. And the Duke notices that the stone began to react to the young man's mana, after which he realizes that he has finally found it. And this is Clyde's son. The boy is starting to collapse from fever and exhaustion. But the Duke at this time claims that there is nothing to worry about, because he absorbed the fog that was taken from him. And this, on the contrary, will help increase his endurance. The main character then realizes that the boy's temperature has dropped, while the Duke claims that they seem to have found the child. And now, he wants to hear an explanation of why the child is in such a state. He also claims that if the answer is a lie, it's better for them to bite their tongues and calmly accept the plunge into eternal sleep now. One of the women then cries out that first they'll go to the director's request with the adoption papers, and the main character understands that everything is as written in the book, and this man has incredible intimidation skills. And he can also feed people, in short. The girl gets a little scared after that. And Auntie turns to him and asks if he didn't warn the Duke that people are afraid of him more than ghosts, so he asks if he could look with a less cold gaze, since even the teacher avoided it, and this child also fell because of him. The Duke claims he fell because of illness, but the knight replies that this is impossible. And in any case, the gentleman always makes a terrible, scary impression, so the little Duke. She definitely doesn't want him to adopt her, after which she asks him if he has thought about it. Well, the man just asks if the guy is asleep, and then approaches the young man. And he claims that a sick child cannot be left on the floor like this, and that Auntie will change the towel to eat. The guy agrees to this and immediately runs away, and the main character claims that she will do the rest, after which she gets to work. And the Duke claims that she acts as if she knew that he was looking for this particular child. But this was his first time there, so he asks how the girl found out. The young lady understands that he is testing her and she needs to answer correctly in case she makes a mistake. She might end up on the street, like in the original, but she can't lie to him, so what can she say? This is what she knew, and claims that she heard the director talking about how she asked to spread rumors and send a message to the Duke that a child with black hair and blue eyes is there, and the man asks if the girl had really told him on purpose that there would be 5 children there. To which the young lady is a little surprised, but understands that if he finds out that she approached him on purpose, he will begin to doubt her. But he is not the one who can notice a slightly clumsy lie. After which the young lady claims that everything is correct, and she thought that Damien also has black hair and blue eyes, and that he could also be the child he is looking for. The man then asks why the girl didn't bring him here right away, where the child was. She wanted to know everything about the main character, and she replies that it was because she wanted the Duke to slowly look around the orphanage, and he figured out exactly what was going on there. Meanwhile, Auntie was bringing towels, and the girl insisted he must have noticed the teachers weren't paying any attention to them. The young lady claims that they do all the work themselves, and the teachers leave them every night, after which they go to the casino, where they also gamble and have fun. That's why she wanted the Duke to see the terrible situation there for himself. At this point, the man sees his ex-wife in the girl, after which he asks what her name is. To which the young lady replies that she is Ellie, and the man turns to her and asks what the boy's name is, to which she replies that he is Damien. And the man says that it is clear, and at this time the director comes to the Duke and claims that she heard him calling her. At this time, the woman is wondering if that girl really told everything. But if so, then she won't let it go so easily. At this time, the man claims that he will adopt this child, to which the woman is surprised, and the Duke insists that there's a child next to him too, and the main character is a little surprised, and Auntie asks if the Duke will take the girl as his adopted daughter, but he replies no, and will take her as his daughter-in-law. And the main character then wonders what he's talking about, and whether the person supposedly connected to Damien is Duchess Ashabel. However, now the guy turns to Ellie and tells her not to leave. She also recalls him asking if she was courting him out of pity, and she understands that, Even though it was only for a short time, she already felt attached to Damien and, in fact, she is glad at the thought that they will never part. However, at this time the headmistress screams that the Duke is not allowed, and he cannot take this sloppy girl. And does he really want to establish her as his daughter-in-law? And does he even know what kind of child she is? The woman understands that if this girl is adopted by the Duke, they will be exposed, and this must be prevented. After which the woman claims that the girl's mother is a thief who tried to steal Count Lathione's things, and she means that she is the daughter of a thief. The young lady then only looks at the director and understands that she is talking about the story of the thief of the patriarchal empire. When the empire was engulfed in war, a thief broke through the strict security and entered the palace. It is said that the emperor's precious treasure was stolen, and he then mobilized a large number of people to catch the thief, but in the end he was unable to catch her. Soon after, she was captured by Count Lathione. Ante understands what he heard. This woman was hanged in the county, but this is the first time he hears of her having a daughter. Meanwhile, the director turns to the Duke and asks him to take her word for it, as the adoption of a daughter-in-law like her would harm the Duke's honor. However, the man only tells her to shut up and asks until when. He still has to listen to this dog nonsense, and how long must he endure the chatter of one who is no better than a dog? After which he tells the guy to remove this woman from there, which only makes her angry. And after this, the Duke gets down on one knee in front of the main character and states that the choice is up to her. He asks her if she'll go with him. However, the girl then insists that she has one condition, and let him fire the outside teachers, and that's all. The headmistress then screams in shock. What is she saying? And the knight understands that the girl will accept the Duke's offer, and only on a special condition. And this child is far from ordinary. The young lady at this time asserts that even if they and Damien will be accepted by the 8th Duke, but the other children will still suffer. Therefore, she asks that these educators be fired for their sins and that this place be made into a good shelter, so that children are no longer sold as commodities. The Duke then replies that he will do just that. After which, he gets up and turns to Ante and tells him to start right away. And the teacher's rights are revoked, to which he replies that he understood the Duke. The headmistress is only surprised after this, and they scream that they shouldn't believe the words of this cunning, mean girl, but when they lead her out the door, she screams that she won't leave it like that. The main character, looking at her, understands that even though she asked, she did not think that the Duke would fulfill the request so quickly. At this time, the man asserts that from now on, this shelter will be the way she wants to see it, so he will ask again, will she go with him? After this, the girl only wonders why he's locking her in, and she doesn't know the reason, but everything is working out pretty well, and if Damien left like this, she would feel uneasy for years until the moment when he meets the real main character, she will be by his side. So now the young lady shakes the Duke's hand and replies that it is good, and she will go too. A short time later, the man is already near the carriage, and claims that the former director and teachers were kicked out of there, and until the new director arrives, the chosen ones in the Hertz, whom they hired in the prelude, will take care of the orphanage. They will also join the ranks of the orphanage's educators to ensure there is no shortage, and the main character then thanks him. And she understands that finally the children will live peacefully, so she is really happy. The girl looks at the door of the shelter with a smile, and thinks how strange it is. After all, the circumstances were too convergent to be a coincidence, and he thought that the girl was the emperor's puppet. But even so, she did not immediately accept his offer and fearlessly set her own conditions, and was even sincerely happy about the changed shelter. And the man thinks that it is not that he wants to accept an unreasonable condition, but he remembers his wife, who claimed that she could solve the problem that was bothering him, but instead she had one condition. I am for him to marry her. At this time, someone turns to Ellie's sister, and the main character asks Betty if it is her. Well, the girl claims that if she leaves, they will never see each other again, and she never saw the other sisters who left. The girl then tells her not to worry because she will return, and the little girl asks if this is true and also if she promises that she will return. A little while later, The Duke walks through the garden and says that no matter how hard he tries, well, he can't put a person into eternal sleep, so at least he took the sword in his hands. After which, Damien comes out from behind the tree and claims that he cannot understand why he is taking him and Ellie. And what does he plan to do? The Duke claims that when they return to the estate, the boy needs to learn to talk, but the young man only tells him to answer why he is taking him and Ellie. The door then claims that he is not taking it away, but only returning it to its original place. And soon the young man will also understand everything, because this is what belongs to him from the very beginning. And now his appearance is no different from that of a wild animal, but if he returns to his original position, then his view will change and become more stern, and then at least he will be able to protect the people dear to him. The guy then thinks that it is more difficult and scary to trust adults than children, so he does not want to follow them. Well, if this person was the same as the owner, then perhaps Ellie was in danger when he lost consciousness. But in the end, due to his weakness, he still could not protect her. While the headmistress was being led out of the room, Tom Chuck woke up, and the main character insisted that they needed to go to where he was supposed to be. The young man then asked what about Ellie and whether she would also go with him, to which the girl replied that, of course. And she'll go with him too, because she promised to always be there. And now I'm telling him so he can protect the people he loves. After which he tells the man to never force Ellie to work. But the man simply asks what kind of work. For a small child, and let the guy not worry about such useless things. But the young man insisted that if a man were to torture Ellie, he would not leave it like that, after which he turned around. And the Duke understands that this young man is the same as his father, and that even mana stones are not needed here. After all, even if he wagged his tail in front of his wife, he would suddenly change his attitude towards other people, and it would be difficult with such a body to show that he was Clyde's son. A little while later, they are already heading in a carriage, and the main character wakes up. And she also thinks when she fell asleep, but she also understands that Damien also fell asleep, and now it is clear that he is not sick. Well, then the girl suddenly looks out the window, and when she sees a lot of crows, she thinks that it is so dark there, as if there is a war going on. The young lady realizes that she never imagined such a wasteland, and it seems that the rumors that this place is teeming with demons are true, but still, she must not lose heart. At this time, a crow knocks on the carriage window, and the main character wonders if this bird really heard her. And she says it seemed to her as if their eyes met, but the girl also thinks that this cannot be. A little while later, the young lady is already getting out of the carriage, and when she sees the luxurious mansion, she thinks that it is so sparkling. But she also looks up at the sky and realizes there are crows there too. They're already at the estate door. Then Damien asks what's wrong with the young lady, but she replies that nothing is wrong. Meanwhile, the servants greet the Duke. They claim they received a message about their arrival. The man then says, "Here's how." But then he remembers something and claims that there is something he forgot to mention in the message, and the butler asks what it is. And the Duke replies that he also brought a child, and she will stand behind one and the daughter-in-law there. The man then says, "So that's how it is." And then she understands what the Duke said and asks what he's talking about. Ellie realizes it clearly makes a lot of sense, but she's also confused. At this time, the man looks at the Duke with a look demanding an explanation of the situation, and the Duke replies that this is how it happened. After which the butler sighs and claims that even the knight did not make any decisions. At this moment, the main character clutches her dress and realizes that she is clearly not welcome there. The girl also recalls how one of the women who adopted her insisted that from now on, the girl should call her mother. But when she learned she was the thief's daughter, she cried out in shock, asking why she hadn't told her. The girl was younger then than she is now, and every time she was thrilled that she could find a new family, but that was so stupid. Well, the young lady understands that it's not now, and all she wants is to prepare for the future because she doesn't need a loving family. At this time, the butler asks if this means that the lady does not have a maid who will help her and that he should have been warned in advance. The main character then claims that she can cope alone and will also be quiet and does not need the help of other people, because even in the shelter, she quietly did all the difficult work herself. The girl understands that she does not want to be considered an annoying child in need of someone's help, and at this time the Duke turns to her for a favor, and he claims that he will take care of everything. After which he sighs, and one of the maids turns to the knight, after which the knight approaches the Duke, and he claims that relatives from the sidelines are waiting for him. The man asks what he said, and have the rumors really already leaked out? To which the young man replies that perhaps this is the case, and the Duke asserts that since there are many eavesdropping ears, it is natural that there are also many chattering mouths. After which he says to tell them that he will rest a little and they will see each other later, and also let France prepare the children's rooms. The butler then agrees and asks them to go in that direction, and the young lady understands that they are talking about the second line, and these are the people who threaten Damien's future. Even though Duke Schutz adopted the boy, but only in the distant future, will they actively develop a sense of connection, and this means that the guy's trials are not over yet, because this is only the beginning. The girl also understands that she cannot see how everything goes wrong for her Damien again. At this time, someone in the hall hits with his hand and screams that it is impossible, and also whether the Duke really found this child, and how he was able to survive. However, another man wonders if the Duke hasn't seen this with his own eyes. His interlocutor replies that there's some kind of trick involved, because, frankly, mana stones can be replaced. But in any case, he aims to once again take the top spot from the vassals of the Clyde family and the sideline, and in addition, he brought into the family the child of the deceased Duke of Clyde. Those who ruled the top for 11 years are their Schutz family, but really, it is right to return to the child who has been wandering in all directions his full powers, and a man screams that they must find a way to prevent this. One of the people in the room, he claims that his thoughts with the Viscount are similar, but who can defeat the Duke? After all, if he could break his will, he would have done it earlier. The Viscount understands that these are impenetrable old men, and they are repeating everything in vain, and that is all they can say. At this time, the Duke enters the room and asks what they are talking about so much, since his ears were hurting even behind the door. The Viscount then says that the Duke has arrived, but the man claims that it looks like it. They wanted to exchange a few words at any cost, so he visited him personally. The men at the table are a little nervous, and the Duke insists that there is no need to waste time on other conversations. And as they'd already heard, he'd found Clyde's son. One of the men then asked for his congratulations and his name. The Duke replies that his name is Damien, and one of the men says that it is a bold and cool name. And the Duke only claims that from now on he will be the head of the Clyde family and understands that they are openly drawing a line between him and Damien. And also, if a boy inherits the family name Clyde, you are in a state where he is nothing special, then they will bite him to death at any moment. And of course, the same can be said about the vassals of the Clyde family, as well as about the relatives of the collateral line. The Duke also claims that, by the way, Damien has a very smart girlfriend, and he thought that she would be useful to the family and took her with him, and he will also give the children an education as his heirs. The Viscount then cries out in shock, asking what the Duke is talking about, and how can children really bear the name Clyde with dignity? The man then just smiles and claims that this means that he will make every effort to support them. The Viscount screams in shock, asking what he's talking about, and the other man says, "Duke, it's impossible, and why should they have those children?" However, Erhard tells them to stop because he is adopting these children, and when the time comes, he will marry them. And then the men are shocked, wondering if he's talking about marriage, and also understand that no matter how young the age, if the engagement takes place, the person is recognized as a full-fledged member of the family. And besides, if the child chosen by Duke Schutz himself marries Damien, then the Clyde family's leadership can no longer be taken away. The Duke, meanwhile, realizes that upon hearing that Clyde's son has been found, they must have been planning to either throw him out or push their family's daughter onto him, but he can't leave it like that. After which he asks him to bless, because those who swore to give their lives for the sake of their family will follow his will. After which the man looks at the Duke in shock, and the Viscount, his hand shaking, realizes this is impossible. and he knew that the Duke would not leave him so easily, but he did not think that he would choose a partner for marriage. So all that was left was to find another way. At this point, the main character entered the room, and seeing how well everything is arranged there, she admires it. The girl also wonders if this is really the room. Indeed, chandeliers are like jewels and she just wants to bite them. The young lady then turns to Damien, but when she turns around, she sees 4 maids there. After which the young lady is a little surprised, and one of them claims that the gentleman left with the butler, and from this day forward they will be there to assist Ms. Ellie. The woman also claims her name is Rona and will do everything possible to make her stay comfortable. She also says that she is pleased to meet them, and the main character also bows and greets them, and Rona claims that Mrs. Ellie can speak freely. The young lady then asks if this is really possible and realizes that she has never spoken informally to adults, and it is a bit of a burden when she is called mistress. At this time, the woman turns to the young lady and claims that she will soon get used to it. After which she turns to the other maids and tells them to also say hello to Mistress Ellie. After which one of them claims her name is Ivana. She also says she's the other maid. The name is May and the third is Ashel, and if the lady has difficulty remembering them, then let her address them as is convenient. Ellie realizes that learning names is not such a difficult task, after which she claims that she has remembered everyone and also asks to love and favor them. The maids are then surprised and think how kind their mistress is, and the young lady thinks maybe they misunderstood, thinking that she is of noble origin. At this time, the woman insists that since they have finished getting to know each other, let the girl go there, because she came from far away and is probably tired. But first, they will help her take a bath. A little while later, they are already combing the young lady's hair, and the girl is wondering what to do because she is at a loss. But she doesn't want to show them her underdeveloped and ugly body. However, if she hesitates, they will begin to despise her. So first, she needs to get used to it. One of the maids can't help but giggle. Then Rona turns to her, after which Ashel apologizes and says that the mistress is simply very nice. She also asks if the mistress has a scent, which she often uses. The young lady then asks if they're talking about fragrances and claims she knows nothing about them. And also just warm water is enough because the water in the shelter was too cold. The girl realizes that she didn't know the names of the fragrances, so she told everything honestly and thinks if the answer is correct. The maid then turns to the mistress and states that until she finds a scent that she likes, they need to try hard, to which the young lady thanks them. And she claims that in order not to disturb them, she will try hard, but the maid then claims that she will say something different, and they will try even harder until the mistress does not bother them. After which she smiles. And that same evening, the main characters are lying in bed. And she understands that although there were those who helped her, it took longer than when she bathed alone. And thanks to this, she was able to use warm water and scented soap at will. And now the girl understands what lightness and freshness mean, and now she doesn't want to leave, after which the young lady rolls around on the bed. But suddenly he bumps into something, and when he turns around, he asks if it is Damien. The girl then asks what happened and why he is so surprised, and the guy answers that it was nothing and he was simply scared. The young lady then also notices that the young man had cut his hair. Then she touches him and realizes he seems uncomfortable and self-conscious about his short hair. But the guy just thinks Ellie has become prettier, and his heart keeps pounding. At this time, the young lady asks if the guy heard the conversation about the butler, and the young man asks what she is talking about. And the girl replies that Rona is talking about them becoming a couple, and the young man is a little surprised. Ellie replies that becoming a couple means loving one person all your life, and the young man wonders what love is. After which the main character thinks how to explain it to him, and claims that she doesn't know either, but her mother said so. After all, when you fall in love, your stomach tickles and it feels like your whole body is burning, and his heart is pounding really hard. The young man is only embarrassed after this, wondering if he really loves Ellie. Meanwhile, the main character insists that it's hard to say the right thing. The young man then begins to hiccup, and the main character then asks in shock what happened, to which the guy replies that he suddenly became very scared. Ellie claims that if she closes her nose like this, the hiccups stop. She also understands that he was suddenly told they would become a couple, and he must be confused. She said she would help him find a family, and she became one herself. And now she feels like she was striving for this at any cost. After which the young lady takes him by the cheek and says that it seems he is going to start hiccups again. The young man then asks why, and the girl replies that his face is so red it looks like it's about to explode. The main character understands that a person must know their limits, because someday the people here will find out that she is the daughter of a thief. Even if Duke Schutz brought her, she can't be sure of her future and needs to be as modest as possible. At this point, the girl touches his cheek and asks if he's feverish, but he insists he's just hot. And the main character then asks if she should move back, because the bed is wide. But the young man then replies that he doesn't want to, and the girl claims that he did say that he was hot. But the guy says that nevertheless she should not move away, and the young lady will then be interested. Is Damien really afraid of nightmares, like last time, which the young man only rejoices at? And he replies that he's scared, because this is an unfamiliar place. The young lady understands that this is different from the story in which he quickly became accustomed to the Duke's estate. After which she says that she understood, and that this time the young man covers himself with a blanket. And the main character, moving closer to him, asks if he will be able to fall asleep even if it is hot and that it will be less scary. The young man then hugs her back and replies that yes, and the main character understands. That he became even cuter, and now she, looking at the guy, tells him to close his eyes. She also wishes him good night. The young lady understands that a lot has happened today, and although he has had difficult days so far, in the future he will be several times happier than the pain he experienced, so today and tomorrow night there will be no more nightmares. The girl also wishes for the Milky Way to fill his dreams. At this point, the Viscount turns to the servant and asks if he's found out anything. He replies that yes, and the girl that the Duke brought is a commoner, and they say that her mother, who fell into eternal sleep, is a very famous thief. And the gentleman must have heard of her too, because this is the story of the woman who stole His Majesty's treasures. The young man then understands that the Duke has brought a boy who had wandered who knows where, and the daughter of a thief. And this is indeed a good combination. After which he throws a bag of coins and says that the man is a good man, and also that this is excellent information. And he gets information quickly, so he's always admired. The guy says the gentleman is exaggerating, after which he picks up the bag of money and declares that he is leaving. The Viscount realizes he needs to report this to His Majesty. Well, it can't be that the Duke didn't know about this, and besides, if the Emperor finds out this truth, the property of the Duke and Clyde could be confiscated by the imperial family. So the man thinks about what to do, but then a brilliant idea comes to his mind and he understands that this way he will win in his favor and get rid of this girl. The main character yawns at this point, and one of the maids asks if the mistress is very tired. The girl replies that she's a little tired, and the woman asks her to be patient a little, because today is the day to introduce her to the elders and vassals. After this, the young lady is dressed in a dress and told that everything is ready. The girl looks at herself in the mirror and realizes that she didn't even know she looked so pretty when dressed up. And the maid turns to the mistress and claims that as soon as Mr. Damien finishes preparing, he will also come, so she asks if the girl will wait for him in the bedroom. To which the young lady agrees and then sits on the bed. Well, then she thinks that it is very tiring. When the maids are looking after her at this time, they claim that Mistress Ellie's skin is so white that it seems like powdered sugar will fall out if you touch it. The young lady then wonders when Damien will arrive. Well, then someone knocks on the door, and the maid asks what happened, and one of the maids replies that Viscount Corbino wants to say hello to Ellie. The woman then asks if she is talking about Viscount Corbino, and the young lady realizes that it seems he wants to know who she is before the official meeting. The women at this time turn to him and claim that Mrs. Ellie is not yet fully ready. But the man ignores her and asks if this is really true, since, in his opinion, she looks perfect. After which he asks the lady if he was rude, and the young lady understands that this is a man who did not want to wait his turn. After which she tells the Viscount that no, she's almost finished her preparations. The man then asks how, and claims that, surprisingly, he dropped by just in time. He also claims that he did not come empty-handed, but in order to meet her and brought a rare thing. After all, this is a mineral called blue hope and a mana stone that can only be obtained on their land. The man understands that if this lady is the daughter of a thief, then she can be caught. It is during the theft that he claims that if the girl has blue hope, she will be able to use magic. And this is very important to her. After which the man also turns to one of the maids and tells her to get out of there. After all, he needs to speak with the lady alone. Rona is a little surprised by this, and the Viscount simply wonders if she really thinks he'll do anything outrageous. The woman falls silent after this, and when the main character nods, she leaves. The young lady looks at this stone and realizes that it is truly beautiful. And the color is the same as Damien's eyes. Well, the man just tells the girl to stop staring, because this is not something she can get. The young lady then gets a little angry and asks what he's talking about when the man claims he's generous enough to let her look at him as much as she wants, and as soon as she has looked around, let her send him back through his maid. The main character then tells him to listen. The man only turns around and states that he will take his leave and they will see each other later. The young lady is then left with this crystal and wonders if this is some kind of one-sided game. And the maid claims that even though the man said so, he himself chose this mana stone for the lady's theme. After which he asks us how she can look at him again. The maid turns to Mistress Ellie. He also claims that they need to go because Mr. Damien has already arrived. The young lady then asks if the guy has arrived too, and he insists that she should go faster then. The maid is a little surprised by this, and she understands that this is unacceptable because if the girl leaves now, her mission will fail. And yet the Viscount had told her to slip the mana stone into the young lady's pocket at the right moment and then leave. The girl is also uneducated, so she certainly won't notice. Meanwhile, the maid asks the young lady if the Viscount has done anything strange, and she replies that everything is fine. Another maid at this time picks up a stone and understands that, if not now, she'll never be able to slip the young lady a stone. So now she turns to the mistress, and he claims that then she will also go along with it, after which the main character agrees. And the maid understands that she needs to act right now, after which she pretends that her ankle has twisted, and he begins to fall. And as he falls, he stuffs the crystal into the young lady's pocket. And he thinks that this is great because she put it down, after which the woman falls down completely. Rona, shocked, asks if the lady is okay and if she's hurt herself. The girl replies that, as far as she can tell, she's fine. Rona then states that she will definitely scold the maid for this, and May is standing outside, so she will escort the young lady. However, the main character turns to the maid who has fallen and says that something else needs to be done before that. She also approaches the maid and says that she fell, and that is probably why her clothes are dirty. However, the woman then turns to the lady with a little surprise and says that she is fine, after which the main character says, quote, "Thank God then," and then she leaves. After which the two maids remain silent, watching their mistress leave. A little while later, the young lady introduces herself and states that her name is Ellie. The men then start whispering and claim that the girl doesn't even have a last name, so the Duke's bride is a commoner, and they ask what the hell is going on. Ellie realizes that their reaction is softer than she thought, and the young man at this time wants to stand up for Ellie. However, the Duke stops him and whispers that the guy has not forgotten what he told him last time. After all, until he returns to his previous position, let him not fuss and behave quietly. The young man gets a little angry after this, and the main character asks if he is in a bad mood, to which they answer that nothing of the sort. Then someone approaches the Duke, and it turns out to be the Viscount. He apologizes and asks if he could take a look at something. The Duke claims that it seems to be something urgent, since it has not even been brought up for discussion, and the Viscount claims that yes, and this is the stone of blue hope that he spoke of earlier. The man also claims that it was finished yesterday, so he hoped the Duke would look at it. And the man then says, "Okay," and let them bring it. Then he turns to the maid, and he tells her to bring this stone, but the woman turns to the Viscount and claims that she wants to say something. After which, she whispers something in his ear, and the man, shocked, asks what she is saying. The Duke then asks what happened. The man replies that they say the stone of blue hope has disappeared. Everyone in the hall immediately starts whispering and asking if the blue hope has disappeared, and they were also watching the stone. The maid replies that she was the one watching the stone, and the man then asks how she was able to watch it at all, and also who he visited last. The maid then trembles a little and insists that it's true. She showed the blue hope to that lady not long ago, but couldn't get it back. Lycon asks if she's talking about that time they came to greet the people, and says yes. The Viscount calmly let her admire it. The man then asks the Duke for forgiveness for saying this to him, and for him having heard something. After all, probably everyone knows the story of the thief who broke into Count Ladione's castle. He also claims that the young lady, or rather the girl's mother, is the famous thief. The men then exclaim, "What did he tell them? Could it really be that the thief's daughter broke in?" So they cry out to the Duke that after what they've heard, they can't let it go. And the Duke realizes that when they suddenly started talking about Blue Hope, he thought it was just empty talk. And the Viscount at this time asserts that this is why, if he doesn't mind, he would like to search this girl. The young lady is then a little surprised and asks what he means. But the Viscount only bows, and she asks him to let her examine her. And the main character then claims that her mother was a thief, and that it's true. Well, she didn't touch anything, so the man offers to check it out. Damien then looks at the young lady and becomes a little worried about her. And the main character then agrees, but claims that if he doesn't find anything on her, he will apologize. The Viscount then says how impudent this is, and asserts that he will accept her conditions. He also asks for the Duke's permission. Erhard argues that if he has already received the young lady's permission, then his permission is not necessary at all, after which the maid approaches the young lady and asks her to excuse her. But when she looks in your pocket, he finds nothing and is a little surprised, after which he claims that there is nothing. The Viscount replies that this is true and there is nothing there, but then, in shock, he realizes what the maid said. And she screams out what kind of nonsense this is, and whether she's searched properly. The woman replies that she has, after which the man jumps towards the young lady and pushes the maid away, screaming for her to move away because he will look for her himself. However, when he truly doesn't find anything, he's shocked and asks if there really is nothing there. Someone whispers, "Didn't that girl steal it?" But Viscount Corbino was very confident in her. The man only clenched his fists after that. And he begins to shake the girl, and also screams where she hid it, and let the young lady speak faster. Damien then screams Ellie's name in shock, but then someone grabs the Viscount's hand. And it turns out to be the Duke, and he also says that the man is going crazy because he can't find it even with his eyes open. The main character then realizes that she didn't think that Duke shoots would help, but the man at that time asserts. In his opinion, the Viscount looks more like the one who committed the mischief, and he asks how the guy thinks and whether he is mistaken. The Viscount then says that everything is not so, and he is simply worried about the Duke, because the situation is obvious, and there's no other way out, except to doubt, after which the man asserts that it makes sense, and then he... Following the situation, the Duke, who must suspect the Viscount, turns to Auntie, and then he agrees, after which he approaches the Viscount and asks for forgiveness, and the man replies that it's fine, and let him check how clean he is, after which the servant checks the man, but then he finds this stone and shows it to the Duke. Bacon then looks on in shock, and he thinks why he was there, and also screams in shock, turning to the Duke, and he claims that he knows nothing about it, and also asks to believe him because he is truly innocent. The main character understands that it is good that Blue Hope is such a light stone. And first the clever daughter of the thief uncovered the maid's plan, feeling the weight in her pocket. After which, when she was being searched, the girl carefully pulled out the Blue Hope that had been placed in the maid's pocket. After which she put the pulled-out stone in the Viscount's pocket and understood that she could take advantage of the moment when he was distracted. And the station where she can get off is called Clever Eli. The girl understands that the maid and the bacon acted as she wanted. It's a shame it's cold in the north, so thick clothes fit well into the plan, and thanks to this, the two didn't notice the Blue Hope. The Duke then turns to the Viscount, who only looks nervous. The man then asserts that it doesn't matter who he is, the payment for the lie must be made, after which he turns to Ante tells him to bring out the Viscount and the maid too. The man then cries out in shock, so that the Duke would forgive him once, because he made a mistake, but then he would be taken out. The young lady then thinks that such a mistake would not be made by a person, but it is difficult to see his end. However, if he hadn't taken action, he wouldn't have been able to protect them. At that moment, someone spoke to Ellie, and he asks what condition she recently set for them, to which the girl replies that they should apologize to her, and the other aristocrats, hearing this, are a little surprised. At this time, the Duke turns to them and asks if they heard everything, and that they do have ears. The men then immediately fall on their knees and ask for forgiveness, and also for mercy because they acted disrespectfully towards her. The Duke claims that it would be better to decide their fate right now, but Ante is not here now, so they will talk after the meeting, to which they exclaim thanks to him for his kindness. The man also says that those who did not agree should sit down more comfortably, to which the other men who did not suspect the young lady thank him and sit down. The Duke then turns to the young lady and Damien and tells them to sit down as well, after which he himself sits down at the table and says that now they can get down to business again, because as he said earlier, he plans to marry these two children. But then who raises his hand and tells the Duke that nobles are forbidden to marry commoners, but the man replies that he knows, and that is why he called them all to find a family to adopt Ellie. The girl then looks at the Duke in shock, and men also think whether he is talking about adoption. The young lady at this time only smiles. The Duke asks which family is better, but the young lady wonders how nobles will adopt the daughter of a thief. He also claims that if no one steps forward, then things will have to be done differently. After which he turns to Ellie and tells her to choose, because she will bear the name of that family, so it is up to her to choose. The young lady is thinking about this at this time, but remembers how someone asked if they really need to make this girl their daughter's servant. Someone also claimed that it was a disgrace to their family and that what could they talk about with a child who was not even at their level. The young lady's brothers and sisters told their father that no matter how much he wanted to accept her, they were ashamed to have anything to do with someone of such a background. After which the young lady found herself on the street again and again. The girl also recalls someone spoke to her, and the little girl asked if it was her mother. The woman then said that although it was hard for her, but let the girl be patient a little longer, and this is because she is her child, who will be loved wherever she goes. And didn't she tell the young lady how much love she was born with? The girl realizes that at first she resented her mother for forcing her to live an unfair life, but the only person who loved her was her mother. And the girl understands that in any case, these people will not accept her as a real adopted daughter. Therefore, she will simply be grateful to them, at least for this, and thinks that she should stay in the Schutz family. At this point, a maid enters the room and apologizes to the Duke, claiming she has an urgent message for the defense of Amantha. The man then asks what it is. The maid replies that Baroness Amantha is here suddenly. But before the maid can finish speaking, the man is already bowing and asking the Duke to forgive him, as he needs to leave. After which he leaves, and someone claims that it seems the Baroness's condition has worsened again, so it must be hard for the Baron. But he can't take his eyes off her, lest something happen. At this point, the main character realizes she's heard that name somewhere before. Well, then someone asks what will happen if a new mine is discovered, because of the Baroness, he won't even be able to inspect it properly, and the girl realizes that she remembered. After all, Baron Amantha was only a minor nobleman who owned a small mine. But later, Damien would win the war, wielding a sword made from minerals found in that mine. And what's more, in the north, where weapons are teeming with monsters, it's money in that case. The girl now turns to the Duke, and also claims that she wants to go to Baron Amantha. The man then says that if this is her will, then he will not dissuade the girl, but he will have to thoroughly convince Baron Amantha. He also whispers to the young lady that such a number will not work on the Baron, and the little girl is a little surprised. After which the man even whispers that this does not mean that even if her skills worked against the stupid Corbino, it does not mean that they will work on Baron Amantha. The little girl then understands that he knew that she had given the Viscount a blue hope, but she does not understand why he simply let it slip through her fingers. And also was it because she helped him meet the guy, and also exposed the Viscount's deception, which benefited him. The man at this time asks if she can understand about the young lady, that then the Duke is the only person in the world who recognizes her value. After which the young lady thinks that she can and claims that she will show her importance. A little while later, she is already walking down the corridor with the boy and asks him about the guy, who replies that it is very beautiful there. The young lady understands that, as Ivana said, there are many beautiful flowers and this place is not quite in keeping with the duchy, but she is glad that Damien likes it. After which she thinks that the vassals have all been silent since that day, and it seems they are very afraid of the Duke. At this time, the young man notices something flying, and the young lady thinks how cute he is, because it looks like he is seeing a dandelion seed for the first time. The guy at this time grabs him and says that he caught him, and then turns to Ellie. And he tells her to go there. The young lady then asks if there is really something there, and the guy turns to her and claims that these flowers are the same color as her hair. The main character then says that this is true, and they are the same color as her hair. After which she claims that then she needs to look for Damien's color. She also says that she found some and points to the blue flowers. The young man is interested. Are they his color? And the girl answers that yes, and asks if they are beautiful, because they are the same color as his eyes. The young man smiles after this, and the main character realizes that now he can smile brightly. Then he turns to the young man and asks if he heard the same thing, that she will soon be adopted. The guy then asks if it's true and if she'll go, and the girl replies that yes, and she's going to become Baron Amant's adopted daughter. The guy then asks if he'll never see Ellie again, and the girl replies that no, and she will simply take her name, and then they will be together, and the young man asks if this is true, and the girl replies that of course, because she promised. Ellie realizes that he is already making eyes at her, after which she asks if Damien has already decided something for himself. He'd been out somewhere this morning, and the guy replies that he was taught fencing because he'll start training seriously tomorrow, and the girl insists that then today is the only day they'll be able to play in peace. After which she also suggests playing tag and claims that this is a game where one drives and catches the other. The young man is already imagining the girl hugging him and says he wants to play. The main character then says, "Great," and then let the boy run away first, because she'll be the one catching him. A little while later, they are all exhausted from the fun, and the girl says that it is hard for her, and also suggests going back because Ivan will be worried, to which the young man agrees and says that he is tired. Ellie also claims that the tag is over, so she can let go of her hands, to which the young man agrees. Well, then the main character turns around and notices something, and wonders if this is really Viscount Corbino's vassal. When she and Damien are alone, the girl also addresses the boy and screams at him to be careful. But when the young lady opens her eyes, she sees that no one is attacking them. And when she looks in that direction, he only sees a woman sitting on the ground, completely frozen. She asks where she is and claims it's very cold there. And the young lady wonders if this is a vassal, because then who is it? After which she turns to her grandmother and asks if she is okay, and can she even stand up? The girl realizes that this woman's clothes are luxurious, and she doesn't look like she's a servant in the duchy. She also suggests going around to the greenhouse first, but when he touches her hand, she is a little surprised. After all, a woman's body is cold as ice, and if things are left like this, trouble will happen. But if you force her to go in this state, she will probably get scared, so you need to treat her as kindly and brightly as possible so that she doesn't get scared. After which the girl turns to her grandmother and claims that her name is Ellie, and until now she was walking with her friend Damien, after which she asks who the grandmother is. Well, the woman then asks if she is a grandmother, to which the young lady is a little surprised. And she wonders if she can't remember, or if this is a form of occlusion. It's like the dementia of her past life. Occlusion is a disease in which memories gradually disappear. Furthermore, it is said that causing anxiety in the affected person will worsen their condition. The young lady also heard that it was an incurable disease for which there was no cure. After which, she adjusts her scarf and tells her grandmother that her hands are very cold. And there are a lot of beautiful flowers blooming there, so she offers to go with her and play, and claims that it is very warm there. The woman then asks if there is a warm place nearby, to which the little girl replies that there is, and asks Damien if this is true, to which the boy also nods. After which, the little girl turns to the guy and claims that the woman should not fall again, so he offers to support her from both sides. After this, the woman smiles completely, and a little while later they are already entering the greenhouse. The woman says that it is indeed very warm there, and the young lady turns to her grandmother and asks, why was she in such a cold place, and had she really lost her way? The woman replies that she doesn't know, and she also doesn't know why she was in such a place, after which the young lady says, that happens, and she also forgets a lot. She also turns to her grandmother, and he asks what her name is, but the woman wants to know if the baby wants to know her name, to which the girl agrees and claims that she felt that she didn't like the way she called her grandma. The woman then thinks about what the baby is saying and also tries to remember her name. But then someone shouts Vieira's name, and the main character thinks that it is a slightly familiar voice. At this time, the man comes closer and asks if she knows how long he has been looking for her and also what she is doing there. The woman then asks if it is Marvin, and the man only tells the woman to just look at herself. The main character then sees the Baron, who tells her to go there because it is dangerous there. Vieira then turns to Marvin and wants to say something, and the young lady wonders if these two are really a married couple, and if so, this grandmother is Baroness Amantha. The man insists that he told her to stay with the maid and that she should follow him because they need to go faster. The woman then apologizes, and the Baron looks angrily at the young lady and claims that he does not know what they were planning but let them not use his wife to cowardly harm her. The main character then asks him what he's talking about and wonders if he mistakenly assumed she was deliberately getting close to the Baroness. Meanwhile, Damien turns to the man and suggests he not say anything nasty to Ellie. The Baron then turns to the young Duke and claims he seems to be mistaken, as he didn't mean anything of the sort. But the boy replies that he is not mistaken, and no good person would say something like that to Ellie. The young lady then turns to the boy, a little shocked. And he understands that it cannot be, because he should not be wary of the Baron because, although now he is the Baron of the Mines, in the past he was an outstanding knight. Although he is old and rarely holds a sword in his hands, this man, with many years of experience and skill, will become a mentor for Damien in the future. But she still thinks what kind of attitude this is towards a person. The young lady then turns to the guy and says that she is fine, so he should stop. After this, the Baron only laughs and says that the girl's skills are incredible. So it seems he understood the reason why the Duke brought the young lady. Vieira then turns to her husband, but he just claims that it won't work on him, so the girl shouldn't approach his wife, because he doesn't intend to adopt her, after which they leave. And the main character thinks that she is lost and assumed that the man would hate her, but not to that extent. However, the young lady understands that everything is fine, since the Baron's misunderstanding of this situation was natural, and even Damien was branded. Now the young lady turns to the guy and says that it is not good to warn anyone. And the young man then wonders why, since Ellie herself said last time that he should not be offended, but fight back when he is angry, and the young lady claims that she said so, but it related to her business. And the guy then claims that that person just said something bad to Ellie and it makes him angry, so that's why he did it, after which the young man asks if he really made a mistake. And the main character, looking at him, understands that Damien is a child who has never known the feelings of anger and sadness. And he opened his heart to her, however, he is still a child who does not understand his feelings. And such a child got angry and also resisted, so the girl thinks whether she should tell him now that this is not possible. After which the young lady finally puts her hands on the guy's shoulders and answers that no, and he's also a good guy. The girl also thinks this is true, because the guy has started expressing his feelings and has become a step better. After this, the young man just smiles and says yes, and the girl understands that she shouldn't suppress his feelings. And he is not yet mature in communicating with others, because he is a kind and gentle child, and if you guide him, he will learn all the emotions in the blink of an eye. But just in case, she now turns to the boy and says that if he gets so angry in the future that he wants to run out, then if she says no, he should know how to stop. The young man then asks if she really should, even if she's in danger. And the main character replies that she will do everything to avoid being in dangerous situations, and even if they are, she will get out, to which the boy replies that he understands. And the girl strokes him, thinking what an innocent boy he is. At this moment, someone addresses the master and mistress. And when the young lady turns around, she sees that it is Ivana, and also wonders whether the Baron has already announced his refusal to adopt. The woman asks if they've encountered the Baron Amantha incident. The girl replies that they recently encountered him and that they were together with the Baroness. The maid at this time only says that the master and mistress should avoid the Baroness the next time they encounter her, and the little girl asks why. And the maid replies that the Baroness suffers from an illness in which her memory is constantly disappearing, and when she loses her memory, she becomes a child, so it is unknown what she can do. The main character then asks why she has health problems. The woman replies that the Baron and Baroness have a son. This is Jarrett. After the Baroness gave birth to Mr. Jarrett, she began to have health problems. The main character then asks if there's a way to fix this, and the maid replies that she doesn't know, and she doesn't know either. But in any case, from now on, whenever they see the Baroness, let them first inform the servants. After which she asks if they understand, but the young lady replies that she doesn't know yet. After which he thinks and realizes that the Baroness's condition did not look so bad as to call her terminally ill. After all, as soon as she saw the Baron, she even shouted out his name. And although the occlusion is difficult to control, is the only solution really to leave her alone? The Baron at this time claims that it was dangerous, so he assigned many servants to her, but he did not think that she would secretly disappear. The woman then turns to her husband, but he claims that he knows that at that moment she was not herself. After which he claims that he doesn't even know what else to do. The man understands that she was very happy when the child was born. That's why I was really looking forward to his birth, but after giving birth, Vieira's health deteriorated sharply. And it was an illness that even imperial medicine couldn't cure. Over time, the incidents became more frequent, and finally, that night, he couldn't bear it any longer and screamed. Vieira was found sleeping near a cliff near the castle. Why did that woman keep losing her memory? Now she claims that she will be more careful in the future, and the man understands that maybe she wanted to forget everything. And after all, initially it was he who wanted the child, so maybe he was the one who tied Vieira, who loved freedom, hand and foot. The woman at this time turns to her husband and then clutches her dress, and she claims that she survived today thanks to that child. The man asks what she's talking about, and the woman replies that he saw it too. That golden-haired girl, after all, she warmed her hand and wrapped a scarf around it. And besides, she brought her to a warm greenhouse, and she really is a kind girl, like an angel, because if it weren't for her, she would still be shaking from the cold outside. The man, then looking at his wife, is shocked and wonders if she is really smiling. But how long ago that was. At this time, the woman turns to Marvin and invites him to go see the children tomorrow and apologize together. After all, she's grateful to that girl and asks if she can do it. The man then looks at his wife, and he understands that the behavior of that child may just be a game since she needs them, but when he sees his wife smile, he thinks why his soul is so heavy. He also recalls telling the girl that this would not work on him, and that she should not approach his wife, since he was not going to adopt her. And the main character at this time asks in shock how this can happen, and after all, it's Damien. Such good skin. The girl also asks how skin can be so soft, and wonders if Damien knows what cotton candy is. The young man replies no, and the girl says yes if she has the chance. Then she'll make cotton candy, and it'll be as soft and fluffy as his cheeks. The guy then claims that Ellie has better cheeks than him, and the young lady replies that no, and his are softer, after which he offers to touch her cheeks. Well, the young man asks how he can, but at that very moment the main character puts his hand on her cheek. To which the young man only becomes embarrassed, and the main character asks how he is and if he is okay. However, when the young man does not answer, the main character only asks what is wrong with him. He also thinks that maybe things are so bad that he can't even tell. Lenotchka also thinks that it's naturally bad, since she couldn't eat or take care of herself. At this time, the maid turns to the mistress and asks for forgiveness for the intrusion, but claims that the Baron and Baroness Amantha have come to see them. The young lady wonders if they've come to see them, but they merely enter and bow. The girl is a little surprised, but the Baron confirms that he didn't know anything and misunderstood Mrs. Ellie, and also came to apologize for it. And he truly feels sorry. The girl understands that she thought he came to interrogate her, so she wonders how to react in this situation. The young lady then realizes that the Baron was late in realizing the benefits of the ore, and now she knows the reason. After all, he was worried about the Baroness and could not normally do other things, so the girl thinks that if only she could create an environment in which the Baron could concentrate on his work, then it is possible to make Damien's sword earlier than expected. After which, she asks if he can ask him for a small favor. By way of apology, the Baron replies, "Of course," and then asks what it is. The young lady replies that she's heard that sick people often get confused by people. And they also say that the higher the voice, the more frightening it becomes for them. She speaks with a smile on her face. So that he wouldn't be angry with his wife, the girl also turns to the lady and asks her to go for a walk with her. The man asks if this is really all the girl wants, and the young lady replies that yes, she wants to go for walks with Madame often. Ellie claims that she hasn't been there long, so her only friend is Damien, and he will be busy teaching fencing, so it would be good if Madame became her friend. The guy at this time claims that if so, then he is not busy at all, but he is the main character and not just telling him to be quiet. After which, she insists she won't bother Madame, so she asks if they could go for walks together at least 3 times a week. The woman replies that she feels she'll become a burden to the girl, and the little girl replies that she doesn't care at all and that she'll be very happy if it works for her. They also say they can go to the greenhouse together again. After all, she wants to show her a multitude of flowers. The woman then looks at the young lady with a little surprise, but then he leans towards her and claims that it is an honor for her, and she hopes that they will get along well. After which they are already sitting at the table, and the main character tells the story of how she came to the Duke's estate. The woman then says that it's a difficult decision to come north. The little girl understands that she's uncomfortable, that adults address her in a respectful tone, after which she claims that a raven or an unexpected thing frightens her. But compared to the shelter, it is simply paradise there. The girl also understands that this is 1,000 times better than being beaten, and she'll soon receive her capital, so everything is fine. The woman then says that the little one has had a hard time, after which she takes her hand in hers and also asks if it was very hard for her. The little girl gets a little embarrassed after this, and then says that it's not really so, because all the children at the orphanage are very kind. Of course, there were also unkind people, and especially the teachers were terrible, but the Duke crushed them all, or rather simply resolved everything. The woman then smiles and says that this is an amazing thing, and that Duke Schutz is not one of those who likes to interfere in other people's affairs. However, the girl claims that he saved Damien from the orphanage, and the woman claims that this is probably because of remorse, and she is not sure that she can tell the girl about it. But if not her, then who will tell her about this? After which she claims to tell about the time when her memory was not damaged. About 15 years ago, the Empire started a great war, and this happened because of an oracle transmitted from the Great Temple that a non-existent force would restore the Empire. The non-existent force signified the strange life force of the World Tree, and people, having studied this force, realized that magic appears in nature. The closer life forms were to the World Tree, the stronger mana they were born with. As proof of mana, those living near the World Tree used unique magic. However, the World Tree suddenly withered, and, despite the efforts of the clans, it never bloomed again. Then rumors began to circulate around the world that despite the fact that they saved the World Tree, they hid the truth only to monopolize power, so the imperial family and the temple started a war to protect the empire. The previous Duke of Clyde and the Duke of Schutz also went to war, and in the process, they became close friends. After the empire won, it was able to control the minority. They went to meet the Duke with joyful emotions, but he did not come alone. After all, he returned with the late Yuria. The main character then listens to all this and wonders if the woman is talking about Yuria. But the story about the Duchess wasn't even mentioned in the book. The woman claims Yuria was a member of a minority clan, and the main character then wonders if a girl from the clan has really become a duchess. The woman, meanwhile, claims that people call the Dukes of Shoots those who inherit the devil's blood. People with the last name Shoots give the generation of Mr. Madness, and she heard that this curse passed down from ancient times makes a person insane. That's why the Shoots estate is called a cursed land. And the main character understands that in the novel, everything was focused on Damien, so this is the first time she's heard it. And the woman claims that the reason the Duke participated in the war was probably to resolve this madness, but after the arrival of Lady Yuria, the Duke's madness disappeared. The young lady then asks how this is possible, and the woman replies that she doesn't know, and the people of the minority clan had different magic, so they can just assume that it was their power. But one way or another after this, the Duke and Yuria got married, and this caused a stir. But nevertheless, these two were passionately in love. And then the main character realizes that this is what it is. And if he was the only one who got rid of the madness that had been passed down from generation to generation, he had no choice but to bring someone from the minority clan. The woman, however, claims that in order to unleash the power of the minority clan, a price had to be paid. 3 years ago, when the agency went to war due to the rebellion of the Allied States, Yuria single-handedly used magic to get rid of the Duke's curse in the end. But the woman suddenly falls silent and claims that after this the Duke severed all ties, although he continued to send letters. 2 years later, Duke Clyde sent a letter announcing the birth of a son. At this time, Duke Shoots opened the castle's locked gates for the first time. The main character then realizes that the accident happened to the Clyde family that day, and it seems she knows why the Duke feels remorse towards Damien, and the loss of his wife and close friend. He thinks it's all his fault, and the girl seems to understand his feelings to some extent. After all, she too had experienced the loss of someone dear to her. At this point, the woman turns to Mrs. Ellie. He asks if she's okay and says she shouldn't have told him. The young lady replies that she's not, and that she simply feels very sorry for the Duke. The woman then strokes the girl's head and says that this is true. However, when she is with Mrs. Ellie, she suddenly remembers her son. The main character then asks if she has a son, and the woman replies that yes, but he cannot become her friend because he is quite an adult. And he's busy working at the mine. The young lady then turns to the madam and asks, "She can take a look at the mine?" And a little while later, the young lady is already there. The man is working on one of the swords at this time and understands that he must achieve results as quickly as possible. He also ponders how best to develop it. It turns out to be Baron Jareth Amantha. The boy realizes that at this rate he won't be able to displease his ailing mother, not getting your father's recognition, and he must help your father so that he does not become disappointed in him. At this time, the man turns to his son and asks how many times he has already sighed heavily. The young man then asks what brings the Baron there, and the man asks if he needs a reason to come to his own mine. The young man remains silent after this, and his father turns to him and asks if the boy has found out anything. The young man then apologizes but replies that no, after which he looks completely dejected. And the man then turns to his son and says that there is no need to rush, even if he does it slowly. However, the guy replies that no, and he will do everything possible not to annoy the Baron, so he shouldn't worry so much. The man is surprised after this, but still says okay and then turns around. And he tells him to do everything to the best of his ability, but even then he crashes into the young lady. And she says it hurts. The man then asks if it's really Mrs. Ellie. Well, he still asks why she's there with Vieira. Meanwhile, the main character merely greets the Baron, and the woman replies that she knows that he is unhappy, but she wanted to come there with Mrs. Ellie. The man then sighs and says that she knows how many dangers there are, but she came anyway. And the main character at this time is already near their son, and asks what this is. The blue thing behind his back, and also whether this is a weapon. The girl also asks if she can touch this sword. after which she turns to the guy with shining eyes and asks if she can. The guy realizes that this girl is the future Duchess of Clyde, whom the Duke brought, and she is much smaller than he thought, after which he claims that the sword is dangerous, so it's impossible. The young lady then gets upset and asks, "So, how?" and also apologizes for what only bothered him. Well, the guy at this time only once again asserts that the sword is dangerous, and the young lady only becomes even more upset. And the young man claims that instead of him, he will show her something else, and the little girl asks if this is true. The Baron then wants to say something, but his wife stops him and only shakes her head. At this time, the guy hands the little girl a monocle that uses a mana stone, after which he puts it on himself and claims that it can be done like this by placing it on the eye. However, when the young lady puts it on, she claims that she feels dizzy, and the man tells her to close her eye on one side, after which the young lady does so, and the man says that this will be right. Vieira, looking at this, is only surprised and says that she would be interested in having a granddaughter. She would have felt the same way. The main character is carrying more stones at this time, and she comes up to them and asks what it is, and the guy says that she can't touch it. The little girl asks why, and he replies that it's a special mineral they discovered this time. It hardens immediately when exposed to heat, and once it sticks, it won't come off, and it even starts releasing a strange substance. The girl then steps away and says that it is definitely a monster. Some guy asks if she has ever seen monsters. The little girl replies that it was not she but Damien, and before arriving at the duchy, he met a monster and also said that he was very scared, and if he ever caught her, he would never let her go. At this time, the guy is at fencing training, and his teacher asks what is wrong with him, to which the young man replies that he feels as if Ellie called him. The Baron's son smiles at this time and says that the young lady's words are true, and if he catches her one day, he will definitely never let her go. But then the man is a little surprised and realizes he saw this as a child when he was a knight. The young man then saw the sparkling ore and understood that there were minerals in such a place. But this is such a rarity, and he thought that he would take it away from the defense, but at that very moment, someone turned to him, and he said that the knight should not touch and rebuke this unreasonable, rare kind of monster. The Baron then asked if it was a monster, and if they had said it was a monster. The woman replied that he was making himself glow on the outside, like a precious stone, but once they touch it, they can never tear themselves away. And despite the fact that it looks beautiful on the outside, it is a monster that bites into human flesh. And now the young man and the Baron remember this and then talk about something. The main character then smiles, and she understands that she knew that the discovered mine was the lair of a monster. But now, using this monster, they will create a weapon. Now, when you come into contact with it, you won't feel any toxicity. But if you hold it for too long, then the poison will seep into the body and become a deadly weapon. So the girl thinks the poorer ones decide to attack first, but they still decided to make a weapon out of the monster, and it's very similar to Schutz's vassals. However, it's 3 years ahead of schedule. At this point, someone approaches Lady Ellie and suggests they return. Well, the young lady says that she couldn't even have a normal conversation with the guy, and the woman responds that this is enough, and Mrs. Ellie has done a great job for her son and husband, as well as for her. After this, the young lady only looks at the woman, and she insists that she needs to return before nightfall because the Duke will be worried. To which the young lady agrees, and when she turns around, she sees the two discussing something with smiles on their faces. At this time, the Duke is sitting in his office and writing something, and someone reports to him that for this reason, Madame Ellie spent time with Baroness Samantha. The man then claims that she became close not to the Baron, but to his wife, and that she is a rather smart child, because now the Baron can concentrate on his primary work. At this time, the butler turns to the Duke and says that this is what he sent, and the man looks at it. He asks if this is an arrow, to which he replies that yes, it was made from a recently discovered material. The Duke then touches the arrow, but when it starts to stick to his finger, he asks what it is, and the butler replies that in fact, the mineral discovered by the Baron was a monster, and he is an incredible person since he uses monsters to make weapons. The Duke then says that just like he thought, he was completely lost because of his wife, and also did not expect that he would make such a good thing. However, it's better to turn this into swords than arrows. The butlers claim this is just the beginning, and they will develop this matter step by step. After which, he also claims that he now understands why he brought Mrs. Ellie. The Duke then asks why, and the man replies that this discovery was made thanks to Lady Ellie. The man then asks if it was really thanks to this child, and the butler replies that yes, and perhaps she said it out of surprise, but thanks to this they were able to understand that this is a monster, and she is smart in her own way. The Duke thinks for a moment after this and realizes that he brought Ellie because of her. She may have had some connection to the Emperor, and despite her young age, she has an invincible spirit and excellent strategy. Thus, it is highly likely that the imperial family took measures to use the child to tame Damien and force him to obey the imperial family. Moreover, Clyde's immersion into eternal sleep was not a simple accident, and he thought that he would benefit from it. From the disclosure of the truth, but even if the information said by the child was an accident, he definitely thought so. Well, now he thinks that if she has some relation to the Emperor, then why could such an assumption cloud his mind? At this time, the butler hears someone enter the room and immediately pulls a dagger out of his jacket. And they are also preparing for an attack, but then he is a little surprised because he sees that it is Mrs. Ellie. The young lady merely greets him, and the man hides the dagger and asks why she came there. The girl then claims that she wanted to say hello to the Duke, and the man then says that this is how it is. The young lady at this time thinks that she was just trying to quietly eavesdrop to find out how well the developments were progressing, and she needs to be more careful because she almost got killed. At this time, the Duke asks what she forgot there. The little girl claims that she wanted to give him something, after which he holds one bag in his hands and claims that it is a cure for headaches. After all, she heard from Rona that the Duke sometimes gets headaches, so she gives this to him. The butler says that the girl is so caring and asks where she got this from. The little girl replies that she just happens to remember how she recently said she had a headache. So the girl decides to change the subject and asks what the butler is hiding behind his back. The man then asks what she is talking about and throws the dagger back. After which he shows his hand and tells the little girl to look because there is nothing there, and the young lady smiles and says that indeed there is nothing, and it looks like she was mistaken. At this time, the Duke turns to her and asks why she was so worried, and the little girl replies that she was worried. But the Duke then asks if this is so, and the little girl answers yes, after which the butler turns to Mrs. Ellie, and he asks if she will give him medicine here, since he also sometimes gets headaches. The young lady then agrees and places the medicine in his hand, but the Duke then turns to Franz. He also says he'll take the medicine. The butler is a little surprised after this. The Duke simply snatches the medicine from his hands. The man then wonders if this is really a man who has never even experienced dizziness. She takes medicine for a headache, and the Duke at this time asks for what purpose she brought it, and clearly not to just give the medicine. The young lady then thinks he's so smart and can't get away with it. She realizes that today she simply wanted to show the spit all her good nature and leave. Well, since that's the case, now she turns to him and claims that he had previously said that she could choose a family for adoption. The man replies that this is true, and the little girl asks if she can choose again, to which the man asks if she really wants to change her family, and whether he's going to give up on something that's already going well. The little girl then thinks she always thought he'd be against it. However, the man then claims that there must be a reason for refusal and asks what kind of family she wants to go to. And the young lady then replies with a smile on her face that she wants to go to the Schutz family. The man is a little surprised after this, and the young lady understands that she is not going to stay long. And when she gets older, she will prepare a renunciation of adoption and thus ask to be allowed to stay for a while. The man simply claims that this is absurd and he cannot stand being disturbed, and even more so if they're children. The little one then realizes that he just threw her out of the field without warning, after which she says that it's okay and asks for forgiveness and will go with that. The young lady also bids the Duke goodnight and then leaves. The butler then turns to him and asserts that Mrs. Ellie is still young. Wouldn't it have been better to say it more gently? The Duke insists it's medicine for children, while the butler says it's because she's a child. The man then claims that she is trying to get rid of the headache caused by the curse with medicine, and moreover with children's medicine that does not work on adults. He also realizes that there is a possibility that this child is an imperial spy, but despite the fact that he knows this, well then and now he thinks, why worry about her at all? The next morning the main character sits, lost in thought, and realizes that she expected the Duke not to accept her. But he was more decisive than she thought. The girl also understands that if she had been a daughter rather than a bride, the process from divorce to adoption renunciation could have been shortened. Well, then she understands that he probably doesn't want to adopt the daughter of the Vorotke, and also, this is a problem for the status of the Duchy of Schutz. But it was 4 years ago, before Damien went to war, and 5 years later. The main character appears, and therefore she has 9 years. The girl also understands that this is enough, and she can do it. After which, she rises from her bed and realizes she needs to find a way to rebuild her life before the heroine arrives. Meanwhile, someone claims it's an honor to assist in the Duke's training, and Vieira claims that at first she couldn't believe it and just kept asking him, and the young lady claims that she is also so excited and hopes that Damien and the Baron will get along well. The young lady understands that this is a hint about the mine, and that it must have helped the defense a lot, and that he will train the boy from this age. Well, she is still worried about the fact that the guy is sharpening his teeth. On the contrary, well, the young lady thinks that everything will go to hell if the Baron helps and Damien refuses, and just in case, it's worth taking action in advance. However, when the young lady enters the room, she sees that the guy is sitting on the ground, and she immediately runs up to him in a worried manner and asks what is wrong with him and if he is hurt. The girl grabs his cheeks and says that they are red and also under the gun, and that this is not good, after which she asks to tell the leader to call the doctor, but the young man replies that he is not hurt and it was a little hard, so he sat down. The main character then asks if this is true, and the young man replies that yes, and he really isn't lying to her. Then the girl says that, thank God. Vieira also greets the Duke and claims that, judging by the knight's expressions, he seems to be having a difficult training session. Meanwhile, the protagonist looks at the others, and she thinks how hard it must have been that everyone looked so tired. The girl also understands that even though the boy is a future swordmaster, he's still a child, and they should be more lenient with him. And also, are they really treating him badly since he just came there recently? After which the young lady turns to the guy and claims that from now on she will come occasionally, after which the young man asks if this is true. And the main character claims that she will make sure that no one creates difficulties for him, to which her boyfriend replies that it really is not difficult for him, and the young lady asks what he is talking about. And also, does he really just not want her to come? To which the young man shakes his head and replies that no. After which, with puppy dog eyes, he claims that it is very difficult for him, and the knight then goes into shock and thinks that it was they who created the difficulties for him. The guy then says he doesn't think it'll be any trouble with Ellie around, so if she comes more often, he'll be glad. The main character then thinks she's seen this somewhere before and remembers the boy smitten with hair. And he did this when he did something wrong, and then the guy ate Betty's sweets. But the main character understands that the guy can't lie, so she pats him on the head and says she understands and will come more often in the future. The girl also says that Damien tried hard, and he is a good guy, and the woman watching these two says how charming they are. The knights are almost in tears at this point, and beg for mercy, but at this time someone else enters the room and greets the young Duke. It turns out to be the Baron, and when he sees his wife with the girl, he asks if they're there too. The young lady then greets the Baron, who claims he didn't think they were together. The little girl claims that she came to thank Togo for the training and asks if it is really a problem that they came, but the man replies that it is not, and, on the contrary, Ms. Ellie helped him a lot. And he was also going to give it to her at another time, but since she came, he will give it to her in advance, after which the man hands her the gift. The main character, looking at it, asks if it's really a bow. The man claims it's a gift from him for the young lady, and the little girl is a little surprised and wonders if it's a gift for Damien. She also realizes that it's like a good bow with a small mana consumption, and her tip must have been more useful than she thought. After all, she received a wonderful gift. The young man is happy, but time has passed, and he realizes that even he hasn't received a gift yet. Meanwhile, the main character asks if swords aren't used more often on the battlefield than bows. The man replies that's true, and the girl is well informed, but their sword-making skills are limited. The main character then realizes that the defense's abilities have not yet reached the ball-making stage, and in this case, hints are of no use. The man at this time claims that he is not sure about Eborg, and the main character asks who he is. After which the man replies that he is a blacksmith working in the duchy, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that all the knightly swords are made by him. The little girl then asks if she can ask him to do something, and the Baron, a little puzzled, states that Eborg is currently blind in one eye. And the main character then asks in shock if he is really blind, and the man replies that yes, and the doctor said that he could go blind in the other eye too. The young lady then asks if even a doctor can't cure this disease, and the man replies that no, and if it were up to him he would have done it long ago, but Eborg himself refuses treatment. The young lady then wonders why, but then realizes that asking the Baron would make her look like an information hoarder, so she'd better stop and ask someone else. After which the little girl says that means he has his reasons, and the man asks if she'll ask again. The girl replies that yes, and her mother told her so, that one should not carelessly ask about other people's affairs, therefore probably he also did not tell him the reason, and the girl asks if this is so, and the man answers that it is true, after which the young lady smiles and then asks if they'll train, insisting that Damien is still eating, so let the man take care of him. The little girl also understands that she means to be more lenient with the boy and wonders if the Baron understands her. The girl also realizes that she can now find out about Eborg. Then someone touches her hand, and when the young lady turns around, she sees Damien there. The girl asks what's going on, and the boy insists he doesn't like that man. The main character then looks at the boy, then defensively again, wondering what a child could possibly be saying, and thank God the Baron didn't hear. The young lady then asks why, and even if he looks like a grandfather, he is very, very strong and tall, but the guy then only clutches his shirt and claims that the man is bad. After all, he said these rude things to her, and the boy, with tears in his eyes, claims that Ellie is not bad, but he made him angry. After speaking unflatteringly of her, he once again exclaims that Ellie isn't bad, but the man gets angry, calls her a bad child, and then sends her away. The young woman then pats the guy on the head and insists she's fine. And the young man trusts her, and that's enough for her, but the boy asks if that's really enough. Well, the young lady notes that, of course, so she hopes that he will trust her with the defense just as he trusts her. After all, he'll be a great help to Damien. The young man then says that's fine, and if Ellie wants it, he agrees, after which the young lady asks if that's true. She also hugs the boy and insists it's a great solution, which frightens the boy a little, and then turns to Ellie. Meanwhile, the girl thinks, wouldn't it be the original story? Then Damien wouldn't hate him so much. And it's all because of the fact that she came with him, and it's also enough that everyone will treat only her badly. Now the young lady turns to the boy and says that she will be there then and wishes him a successful training, after which she understands that now there is only one way for Damien to become stronger. After all, if the people of the Schutz family recognize Damien, then others will not be able to show hostility towards him, and now the young man begins training. He also attacks the Baron, who deftly repels his attacks. The butler approaches them and says that Madame and Miss Ellie were there. The young lady then asks what his fate is there, and the man asks if today isn't the first day of the Duke's training and naturally he should come. And he was, of course, worried, but it seems the gentleman is handling it well. The main character replies that yes, and she thinks the Baron is taking it seriously too. After which she also shows the bow and claims that he did it for her and that it is also a bow made from a recently discovered mineral. The young lady realizes she's increased the Baron's favor, and he thinks he'll let her notice, but the butler merely averts his gaze and says the Duke has lost the initiative. The young lady realizes this is a rather sluggish reaction, and wonders what he's keeping behind his back. The girl then tries to look, thinking the man is hiding it, which makes her even more curious. But then a sound comes from the training room, and the main character, looking at the boy, is a little worried about him. The butler then asks if she'll go and see, and the girl clenches her fists and insists she wants to go but won't. She understands that she cannot always stand up for him, and that in order for the guy to proudly inherit the family name, he must rise up on his own. At this time, the Baron stands with the ball aimed at the young man and understands that he tried several times to adjust to the tempo, but Togo himself, without realizing it, lost his way. He also understands that the Duke's current fencing leaves much to be desired, but his ability to read moves and attack mercilessly is excellent. But even experienced knights on the battlefield cannot read movement so quickly, so he wonders how this little boy managed to do it. At this time, the young man runs up to the Baron again and attacks him, but he repels the attack, and the man understands that before he came, the knight had opposed him. And judging by their expressions, the training turned out to be more difficult than expected, but now the Duke is crossing swords with him, and when he lived, there were times of confronting monsters. At this time, the boy falls, and the man tells him to get up, because the training is not over yet. The young man merely looks at him with a hint of malice. The man wonders if that experience really created this skill, then asserts that there are two types of fencing. And this fencing is for attack as well as defense, and only its offensive ability is excellent. But his sword still cannot protect others, after which the young man clenches his fist. And he rises again, and, breathing heavily, looks clearly at the Duke. This frightens him a little, after which the sword falls out of the young man's hands, and he states that that's enough for today and the guy should have a good rest. The guy then claims that he can still continue. The Baron says that by showing his weaknesses, he is missing the chance to win, so they'll see each other again after a break. After that, the Baron talks to the Rawlings and then turns around. He sees that the young lady approaches the guy, after which he smiles and understands that now it is clear to him why Duke Schutz brought this child. The young lady then turns to the guy and realizes that this is the first time she has seen him so upset, after which she thinks about how she should proceed, since he has an aversion to defense. Well, the young man just turns to Ellie and claims that he will try and become a strong person. The main character then smiles and realizes that she didn't need to worry, because the guy now has a goal, and this is a good change. After which the girl says that he is already strong enough, but the young man replies that in order to protect the people dear to him, he must become even stronger, and now he can't do anything. The young lady then thinks that he says this phrase in the original story at the moment the main character appears and thinks it's okay that he said it now, after which she claims that then he should eat more from now on. The guy asks if it has to do with food, and the girl replies that of course, if he eats well, he can fight 1 against 17. The girl also realizes that she has wiped everything, and at this time someone turns to the Duke and Mrs. Ellie. It turns out it's the maid, and she claims that lunch is ready and that they can't skip lunchtime, so they suggest going together. The young lady then agrees and tells Damien to come with her because he needs to eat and get stronger. A little while later, they are already heading down the road and the young lady sighs and also says that it is quite chilly today. The guy claims that he is nevertheless happy to hang out with Ellie, and the young lady asks if this is true. The young man then begins to blow warm air, and the main character asks if he repeats after her. The young man then replies that yes, and the girl thinks how cute he is, after which she says that it's great. She also suggests going that way this time. But then the maid turns to the Duke and Mistress Ellie, claiming that the road is dangerous and suggests going the other way. The main character then asks why. When she turns to the maid, she asks why she is covering her nose, after which the woman apologizes to the mistress, claiming that there is some kind of stench nearby. Her nose is also more sensitive than other people's, and the smell at the training ground was also pungent. The little girl then asks if it's true what he says, that she can't smell anything. But then, in shock, she asks if it really comes from her and that it definitely isn't Damien, because he smells fragrant. The maid then screams that this cannot be, and that Mrs. Ellie and the Duke always smell of flowers. The woman also claims that she wants to show them one place, so she offers to follow her, after which they approach one of the lakes. And he claims that this place is called the Red Lake, which is only on their territory, and also that many people, having come too close to the lake out of curiosity about its color, drowned. She brought them there to warn them in advance of the dangers of this place. The protagonist wonders if people actually fell there and fell into eternal sleep, and the woman replies that incidents happened there every year, so they were thinking of filling it up. But because of the magic, it never filled up, so the two of them shouldn't go near the lake. The main character immediately turns to Damien and asks if he heard, but the maid stands behind her mistress and tells her to promise too. The young lady then gets a little angry and claims she's older than Damien, but suddenly they hear a noise coming from behind the hut door. The main character then gets scared and hugs Damien, but then a man comes out of there with an eye patch and drops of red liquid on his beard. Crows also fly away from that place, and the main character, watching this man, wonders if he is an evil demon. Well, he just drinks something from a bottle, and the main character thinks that it smells like alcohol, and there is also some kind of sour smell coming from him. At this time, the maid greets him and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and also asks if the man remembers her. But he only claims that he told her not to turn the children in there, and that it's dangerous there. The woman then replies that she knows, however. She still covers her nose, and the young lady realizes that it was difficult for her to be nearby because of the smell of this man, after which the maid suggests that they quickly leave there. But after this, the woman only says that this is Mr. Eborg, and the main character, hearing this, understands that this is the very same blacksmith who forged Damien's sword. When they finally leave from there, the maid seems to have escaped from the lair of monsters. But the main game does not address her, and asks if this is really the same Eborg who made weapons for the duchy, because she heard about it from the Baron. The maid replies that yes, it is an old story. The young lady asks if he is making it now since he is blind. After which, the woman replies that the guy's daughter fell into the Red Lake and fell into eternal sleep. She also says that it was a long time ago and everyone in the duchy knows about it, and the young lady understands that that is why he smelled of alcohol. After all, he is so sad that his daughter has fallen into eternal sleep, and he also has problems with his eyes, and the woman claims that they say Eborg became like this after Yuri fell into eternal sleep. And it was hard for him. After his daughter's immersion in eternal sleep, however, Yuri comes to the duchy and communicates with the lady who is the same age as his daughter. He avoided depression, but after she left this world, he drinks alcohol all day long, and according to the duchy's doctor, he continues to refuse treatment. The young lady then says, "So that's how it is." And the woman says that now they know and should never go near the Red Lake, and also asks if they understand, to which they answer yes. And then the woman says goodnight to them, and the young lady thinks that she is a little worried, and maybe it is because she remembered her mother. After which the young lady hugs the guy and invites him to sleep. The girl also realizes that he's bothering her. Therefore, tomorrow she needs to go there despite the fact that she gave the maid a promise. The next day, the main character finds herself outside and realizes that she was out in the cold all day yesterday and caught a slight cold. However, she did not expect that just because of one sneeze they would call the Duke's doctor, and everyone there would be so caring. Then the young lady approaches the tree and sees the doctor from the duchy coming out of the man's hut. The doctor tries to fight off the crows, and the young lady wonders if today is the day of Eborg's treatment. After which she realizes that everything worked out well, because now she can ask about Eborg. The young lady then turns to the doctor, but he only contacts the Viscount through the orb and tells him not to worry, because Eborg is now completely blind in one eye, and he believes that the more medication he takes, the worse his condition gets. Vec then tells the guide to make sure he sees it for himself. After all, without Eborg, no one would be able to create a sword containing the aura of the Duke, and without weapons, the military power of the Duchy of Schutz would be weakened, and this is an excellent opportunity for their Quintar family to engage in the arms trade. The doctor then replied that yes, and he understood perfectly well, but now Schutz would have a hard time managing alone. The Viscount replied that their duchy would be nothing without Eborg. And also the mineral discovered by the Baron should not be given to Eborg. The doctor replies that he is closely monitoring this, and the young lady wonders what it is. The man asks if everything goes well, will he definitely transfer part of the arms trading rights to him? Vec then asks if he seems like a liar, and the doctor replies that absolutely not, and why should he doubt him? At this point, the main character wonders if they've completely lost their minds. A little while later, the man wakes up, and he thinks that today it is especially noisy. He also turns to someone and asks if they could be quieter. However, when he sees the young lady, he is a little surprised, after which he immediately grabs her and asks what she is pretending to be doing, as it is very dangerous there. He also asks if she has completely lost her fear, and the young lady then greets the uncle. The man then wonders if she's gone crazy or if she's tired of living. He also realizes that Togo, without even noticing, has started screaming. And people are already scared of him, and this child will definitely cry. But the main character now only apologizes and thanks him for saving her. The man is a little surprised after this and claims that he did not save her, and also asks what she forgot about the young league, but only hands him an arrow. And she asks if it's cool because she received it as a gift, but she has never shot a bow. And also doesn't want anyone to get hurt, so you came to a deserted place to practice. The girl understands that she knows that he is interested in this, after which she turns to the man and asks if he wants her to give him the arrow, after which he asks if he will give her this arrow from what suddenly. The girl understands that he doesn't take his eyes off this arrow, but the man just turns away at this time. And he claims that he is not such a shameless person to take things from children. After which, the young lady says that if you think about it, Baron Amantha, who gave it to her, will be upset if she gives it to him. Then she says that she will lend it to him for a short time and let him look at it as much as he wants, and then he can return it to her. The man then looks at the arrow and seems to be telling him to look at it, as he is interested in what material it is made of. After which he finally says that he will take a look, and the young ladies understand that this is a successful way to attract attention to new minerals. At this time, the man suggests that they go in first, because if they just stand there, they might freeze. After which they enter the room, and the main character thinks how much dirt there is in this house and also the strong smell of alcohol. At this time, the man tells her to sit over there, because now, because of some child, he also has to do some unplanned cleaning. The young lady then reflects and realizes that there are forces that seek to harm the Duchy of Schutz, and Eborg's misfortune has become an opportunity for them. The man sees practically nothing, and his loss of vision may be their doing, but we cannot allow his vision to deteriorate. After which the young lady looks at the table and wonders if these are really medicines, and when she sees this color, she thinks that it is suspicious and she needs to take it with her. But when the man turns to that young lady and only pretends that she is cold, he then claims what a capricious child she is. Then he lights a fire in the fireplace, and the young lady wonders if he's eating normally, after which she claims she's hungry. The man claims he has no food, and the little girl asks what he eats then, after which he remains silent and claims about the young lady that this is not right, because there are only bottles of alcohol around, and in order to become healthy he needs to eat a lot, because they say that you need to eat well in order to live well tomorrow. Well, the man claims that he has heard this many times, and that he had a daughter who was much more beautiful and smarter than her, but now she can't answer, she drowned in that very lake, and all this is because of him, because he should have told her not to go there and he should have been more careful, but he couldn't. The main character then says that it is not her uncle's fault and that her mother also fell into eternal sleep because of her. The girl also claims that her mother did not do good deeds and she is not going to justify her because she did badly. However, if she had not been there, then perhaps she would not have made such an unwise choice. But nevertheless, if her mother had had such experiences, she would have said the following: "This is because it's not her fault, so if his daughter were with him now, that's exactly what she would say." The man then looks at the young lady with a little surprise, and also claims that several years ago there was a person who said the same thing as she, and now this person is not in their world. But they are very similar. A little while later, the young lady says it's time for her to leave because she might get scolded for being gone for so long. The young lady also claims she only lent him the arrow for today and instead suggests playing with her and her friends tomorrow, as she was planning to have fun with them, and asks if he's okay with it. The man replies that's fine and asks where he should go. And the girl replies that she is going to the duchy, to which he is only surprised, and the young lady. He smiles, after which he leaves, and also states that he will wait for his uncle. The man is then left alone near the hut, and also realizes that he never thought there was anything in the duchy. Such a small servant. But she does everything in her own way, after which the man also holds an arrow in his hands, and he realizes that for the first time in a long time, a long night awaits him. The next morning, he's already heading off somewhere, and he realizes he's been staring at that arrow all night and hasn't gotten much sleep. He also realizes he'd be better off seeing the ore for himself, from which the arrowhead is made, but then he thinks, who will entrust the work to the blacksmith, who hasn't used his hammer for 10 years, and looking at the duchy building, he thinks how long it has been since he was next to it. He also thinks that there will be trouble if he sees the Duke, and he won't even be able to raise his eyes to him. The man also wonders if he smells of alcohol, because he can't afford to stink in front of his children. At this time, the knights turn to the man and ask why he came there, but then they also ask what he has in his hands. And when they see the arrow, they start to take out their swords and tell him to reveal his identity. The man then tells them to listen and wants to introduce himself, but he realizes that there are no people left in the duchy who know him. And she also thinks how to explain everything to him, but at this time someone opens the gate and says that he was gone for so long that she could not recognize him. It turns out to be Viera, and she is a knight. They ask if she knows this man, and the woman replies that it is true and she knows him very well. After which, she says that she and Eborg haven't seen each other in a while. A little while later, he thanks her and claims that it was thanks to her that he was able to enter. The woman says that it is quite natural that he will not be welcome there if he comes only with an arrow in his hands. After which, the woman tells him to come in because Mrs. Ellie is waiting for him. The man then mutters under his breath, "Isn't that little girl a maid?" and then enters the room. And the main character turns to her uncle and says that he has arrived early and also welcomes his madam. The man is just wondering if it is Baron Amantha, and the Baron, in shock, asks if it is Eborg. She also asks how he ended up there. The young lady claims she invited him to introduce the harrow and that he's a friend of hers who's interested in weapons. He also liked the gift he gave her, and since the Baron makes weapons, she thinks they have something to talk about. The man then asks how this is possible, and the main character tells her uncle to sit there. After which he does so, the Baron asks what it means that Viera heard from Ellie about his visit and went to meet him. The man replies that yes, that's what happened in his life. The young lady understands that the Baron suspects her again, but in this case, it is necessary to change the subject. Afterwards, the little girl turns to her uncle and asks how he likes the arrow, and the man replies that it gave him a good look at her and that he didn't know she was a noble woman yesterday, so he was a little rude. The girl replies that everything is fine and that he shouldn't pay attention. And the Baron at this time turns to the man and says that if he looked at it, then what does he think about this arrow? And the man replies that it is an amazing thing and asks how he came up with the idea of using monsters as consumables. And after this, the main character giggles in her mind and understands that everything is going according to her plan. At this time, the young man thinks that Ellie seems to like cocoa and slips it to the young lady. The girl then asks if he is going to drink, and the guy replies that he thinks Ellie should drink it, to which the young lady asks why. But at that moment, she hears someone shout that he thinks so too. And when she turns around, she sees the Baron. He, grabbing Eborg by the shoulders, asserts that he also thinks that it is better to make balls than arrows, and he knew that the man would say so. After which he asks if he has decided and whether they will try to do it together. The man also claims that with his skills he can create a great thing, but then he realizes that he went a bit too far and apologizes. He also claims that his eye has not yet recovered and asks if he still does not think about undergoing treatment. But the man is only interested in what the Baron is talking about and he diligently carries out the treatment. The Baron asks what he's talking about, and Eborg claims he even received a prescription from Dr. Deern. Well then, he is shocked, and thinks that today, while looking at the arrow, he forgot about the medicine, but then he also doesn't understand. Why does he see more clearly than usual? The Baron asks if he got the prescription, and the man ponders. Did this medicine really have a bad effect on his vision? After which he turns to the Baron, and he says he has a favor to ask of him. The young lady watches him at this time. Meanwhile, the Duke is conversing with the other aristocrats, and someone claims he's starting a periodic report on each territory. One of the men then speculates that if that thief's daughter becomes the heir, problems with the imperial family are inevitable. And he also thinks what will happen if the Duchy of Schutz collapses because of this, because even with the right to trade weapons without the Duchy of Schutz, it will not work. After which he looks at Viscount Quintar and wonders if he has come up with any plan. The Duke, meanwhile, is just sitting there with a bottle of pills. He also remembers how the young lady told him not to get sick. The knight, watching this, thinks about what kind of bottle of medicine it is that makes the Duke happy all day, and the man at this time says that then they will begin. And then one of the people says that to begin with, they will begin a report from their lands, and this time, there is new development there. Then someone else reports on their lands, and their Duke says that this is not bad, and also tells them to keep reporting. One of them then claims that in Quintar they created a new weapon, reducing the existing disadvantages and increasing the advantages, unlike the previous heavy swords. It is light and easy to use, and the man then takes out the sword and says that is why. He'd like to dedicate it to the Duke. He understands that until now, Eborg had been forging the Duke's balls, but now everything has changed, and if they don't catch the monsters rampaging outside, the land will suffer great losses. Therefore, Duke Schutz is restricted to using only their swords. The Duke remains silent for a moment, then turns to Baron Amantha and asks how the development of the newly discovered material is progressing. He replies that yes, it's going smoothly, but the man then says that he is interested in what he means by the word smooth. The one who offers the Duke a sword claims that he heard that he was unable to make anything except arrows. But don't all the knights of the Duchy of Schutz use swords? So arrows are out of place there, and he says that maybe it is only for a hunting competition. After this, silence falls between them, and the Duke leaves the bottle of medicine alone, then asks Deern how Eborg is doing. The doctor then begins to answer, but then he exchanges glances with the Viscount, after which he claims that, as always, he refuses treatment and it is more likely a psychological factor, so they cannot force him to receive treatment, and the Duke says that this is how it is. Then he picks up the sword and says it's truly light. Alec realizes he's succeeded, and Shuich has finally taken their sword. At this moment, someone knocks on the door, and the man wonders who decided to interrupt the meeting, as everything almost worked out. Meanwhile, the Duke tells them to come in. The maid then apologizes for the sudden intrusion and asks if Dr. Durney is there. The man rises from his seat and replies that yes, he is there. And the woman replies that Mrs. Ellie is complaining about the eye drops he prescribed, after which he asks how this could have happened. And the man replies that this is some kind of misunderstanding, since he never prescribed medication to her. The maid shows him a bottle of medicine and asks if that means he didn't prescribe it. The man then looks at it and realizes it's the very same medicine he prescribed to Eborg. To make sure Eborg's eyesight was worsened, he specially prepared this liquid from the cursed Red Lake. So he wonders why it ended up in the hands of the thief's daughter. And he also understands that now the Duke is considering her as an heir, and if that child had gone blind, he would have lost his life. After which he screams in shock where the girl is now. She needs to be examined because it is a dangerous drug. The woman then asks what he is saying, since he clearly said that it is a medicine, but the man is interested in who said such ridiculous nonsense, since it is a sure poison and measures must be taken as soon as possible. But then he says that he will now go check on her condition himself and asks where the lady is and also let her take him there quickly, But when the man turns around, he sees Eborg in front of him, who is furious, and he asks how the man ended up there, but Eborg then says that it is still a fake medicine, after which the doctor thinks about what to say. The man insists that the medicine he gave him is actually poison. Meanwhile, the Duke turns to Deern and asks what this all means, and whether the doctor gave Eborg a counterfeit medicine. Whispers begin to circulate in the hall, asking if Eborg's health has improved. He looks quite healthy after all. The doctor then realizes he can't fall into eternal sleep without changing, after which he claims he did everything as he was ordered, and that Viscount Quintar ordered him to do so. The man then asks what kind of utter nonsense this is, and the doctor wonders if he wasn't the one who said that the military power of the North would weaken only after Eborg was plunged into a crippling sleep. But the Viscount, after this, is only shocked, and asks if the guy is really trying to blame him for the sins he committed. The doctor then takes out the ball and claims that he has evidence, after which there is a hologram in the ball about how the Viscount said that without Eborg, no one would be able to create a sword containing the Duke's aura, and without a weapon, the military power of Duke Schutz would be weakened. And this is a perfect opportunity for their Quintar family to get into the arms trade. The man then wonders if that foolish Deern really did keep track of their entire conversation. Well, at this time, the Duke turns to them and claims that this is all funny, and he, of course, thought that while he was looking for the child, a rat was hiding. But he didn't imagine that she could hide for so long and at the same time in his castle, after which the man points the ball at this guy. And the Viscount understands that these are the eyes of a bad man whose mania will be relieved only at the sight of a red liquid, after which he shakes, and the Duke claims that, as he said, this ball is much lighter than others and easy to wield. So cutting down the enemy will be a piece of cake. The knight then realizes that the Duke is furious, and, if this continues, he will lose his composure. Then Eborg approaches the knight and tells him that after 10 years, he dedicates this sword to him. He also realizes that he feels as if he's at an execution site, and the man certainly won't accept the ball from the one who let go of his hammer 10 years ago. At this point, the Duke throws the sword away from the Viscount and says how long ago it was, since his hands are not used to holding all sorts of fakes. And since he got a real sword in his hands, he must try it out, and he asks if this is not so, after which he heads to the Viscount. And a little while later, the rest of the aristocrats watch this picture in shock, and the Duke, having finished his business, turns to Eborg, after which he asks what is going on. But the man also understands that he accepted the sword from him, but he must be prepared to be punished for the problems that arose in his absence, after which he states that he will gladly accept any punishment. But the Duke interrupts him and asks how long he needs to wait, to which the man looks a little surprised. Erhard replies that he means making balls. After all, dividing them among the knights would take some time, and he wanted it to be quick. The man then asserted that he would make the balls as quickly as possible, and the Duke only exchanges glances with him, and the knight, watching this, understands that, fortunately, Eborg's affairs and the uncovering of the conspiracy were resolved well, and since the Duke's madness finally saw the red liquid, then he must have calmed down. But he still wonders why the Duke's aura hasn't dissipated yet, and whether such a quantity of red liquid couldn't calm him down. After which the man moves on, and the knight, shocked, asks where he's going. Meanwhile, the Duke opens the door to their room for the young lady, who asks what's going on. But the man just starts shaking the young lady and talks about her eyes, because he was told that she put some strange medicine in them, after which the young lady says that she feels dizzy. And she also wonders if the lie was really revealed, because judging by the red liquid on his clothes, things turned out okay. After which she doesn't even know what to say and understands that she should have gone there in person and pretended to put eye drops in her eyes. At this time, someone approaches the Duke, and it turns out to be the maid, after which she claims that she did not think that he would come, and therefore could not prepare anything. At this time, a knight also runs into the room and screams where the Duke went, without saying a word and so quickly. After which, he actually sees the Duke next to the young lady and tells him to hurry up and go there, but he doesn't even move. The main character only smiles after this. And when they leave the room, the knight sighs heavily, and the Duke asks why he keeps sighing, to which the guy asks if it's true. He asks this because he doesn't understand what's going on. The man replies that if he knew, he wouldn't have asked the question, and the knight hands him a handkerchief and tells him to first wipe off the red liquid. He also claims he's referring to Lady Ellie. The Duke then asks the knight to explain himself more clearly, but he insists they've long since gotten used to the Duke putting someone into eternal sleep. But Mrs. Ellie is still a child, and she was probably very scared when she suddenly saw the red liquid. But if other children were in her place, they would have lost consciousness. At this point, the maid also comes out into the hallway and claims that the Duke must have dropped it, so she brought it to give to him. The man then says, "That's how it is," and takes the bottle of medicine. Well, the maid claims that Mistress Ellie got this medicine from her and apparently didn't drink it herself, but gave it to the Duke. The knight then claims that if it were him, he would have drunk it right away. After all, he wouldn't care whether such a picky man was ill or not. But after this, the Duke simply reaches out to the knight and snatches the handkerchief from his hands, telling him to give it to him, to which the boy agrees. He then recalls the way the young lady looked at him and asks Auntie if other knights usually carry something similar. The young man replies, "Of course not," and the Duke says that he should distribute one among them each, so that they could wipe off the red liquid at any time, and it can be made from any fabric. He also recalls how a maid approached Mrs. Ellie and asked how she got the cut on her face. The little girl claimed that she had scratched herself with the handkerchief that the knight had lent her, and now the Duke was thinking about it, and then said that they should make it out of the softest fabric. He also understands that Ellie can borrow a scarf from the knights, so it is better to take care of a beautiful pattern on the scarf. After which he also turns to Rona and tells her to order the servants to apply something like floral patterns to the scarves, and Auntie will handle the distribution. After this, the knight remains silent, and the maid replies that she obeys, after which the Duke leaves, and the maid then asks if something has happened to him. A little while later, someone tells the gentleman and lady that they have arrived, and the young lady is only surprised and realizes that this is the Schutz estate, Felingu. When the young lady steps out of the carriage, she thinks it's very crowded. At this point, the border guard turns to the lady and asks if she really doesn't want to visit the shopping street, since it was the first time in Hertz that he had given permission for the long-awaited stroll. The girl then answers yes and says that she likes this market and also understands that after her adoption is rejected, she will need the strength of another trading company to conduct business under her own name. And when the chance arose, she had to do market research, so now the girl tells Damien that they can go, and there are a lot of people there, so it could be dangerous, and that he should under no circumstances let go of her hand. The young man then asks if he should let go of his hand if there are few people, and the girl understands that it seems like he is scared because of the large number of people, and says that if the boy wants, they can continue holding hands. The guy then asks if this is true, and asks her to promise that she will not let go of his hand, to which the young lady agrees and suggests going in one direction or another. After which they approach one merchant, who says that this is a new weapon that arrived only today, and the girl understands that, as expected, the North is most prepared to fight monsters. Afterwards they eat something, and the young lady asks how the guy is doing, and if it's tasty. Afterward, the young lady also notices that he has sauce on his face, and she wonders what to do, since she doesn't even have anything to wipe it with. But one of the knights hands her a handkerchief and tells the lady to use it. The main character then looks at him and thanks him, and also realizes that it seems he likes beautiful things and also wipes the guy's face. The main character also thinks that this is enough to just look around, and now she wants to know more about the things sold there, after which the young lady looks at one potion. The man asks if she's interested, to which the girl replies that she is, and that it's so surprising. The man also asks if she even knows how much it costs. But when a knight appears next to the young lady, as well as the maids, he says that if she has enough money she can take one look, after which the young lady says that this is amazing and asks what it is, and the man replies that it is a potion that notices wounds. He also addresses her as Honorable Lady, and insists that it's for minor bruises, but it's better to see a priest if it's serious. The girl then realizes what a minor effect such a price means. and that it's better to go to church, which will cleanse Duke Shutta from madness, but nevertheless poor people are unable to ask for divine help, which is why they buy such potions. The woman turns to Mistress Ellie and asks if she's in pain, and why she's interested in healing potions. The little girl replies that she's fine, but she was just thinking about giving it to the Duke when he's ill. And then one of the maids says how about buying one as a gift, because in their estate there is a custom that when children go out for their first walk they buy gifts for their parents, and this makes the gift more meaningful to the recipient. The main character then thinks about the word gift and realizes that a potion for Duke Shoots, who didn't even blink when he was given a headache cure, would be no better. And the young lady understands that in no case will he be delighted with this, and the little girl then says that she will not buy it, but would rather look at something else. After which the young lady looks at the jewelry and thinks how beautiful it is, and the seller turns to her and says that she has a diamond eye, and how about choosing one for herself. The young lady looks at one of the earrings and realizes that they are like Damien's eyes, after which she thinks whether to buy them, and then buys something anyway. And she realizes they're done with the gifts, so she turns to the maids and tells them they're leaving. Then she looks at the maids, who seem envious, and she wonders if they too are expecting a gift from her. The girl understands that although they treat her this way by the Duke's orders, in reality they are very polite people, and she never bought anything for anyone, but to express her gratitude to everyone in the castle. The girl thinks maybe she should buy something, but she's still wondering if they'll like her gifts, and what if they don't? At that moment, someone else approaches the stall and says it's very beautiful. The man then tells them to come and look, because this is a handmade product, and they are inexpensive but quite popular. The woman then asks if it's true, and claims that that sparkling one really does look nice, and that she can choose one for their child, to which he agrees and wonders about the main character, why is there suddenly a crowd there? Afterwards they buy something, and when the man wraps it up, the young man slips one of the pieces of jewelry into his pocket, and the main character, seeing this, understands what Duke Shoots must have felt when he noticed the skill of her dexterous hands. The girl also understands that these are not her things, so it doesn't matter if she passes by, but she does not want to allow such antics in the area where she plans to do business in the future. She then turns to the boy and asks where he's going, but he asks her why, and the little girl insists she actually saw him steal something from there. The woman then asks what the girl is saying now, and whether their child really did something wrong. The young lady thinks they've hit the nail on the head, and that it would be perfect as a first gift for the Duke. The woman, meanwhile, insists they knew nothing about it, and the man claims that the child simply made a mistake in his childish stupidity, after which he tells him to apologize quickly, but when the knight looks at them angrily. The man, now a little more agitated, turns to his son and says he won't do it again, and where he even learned to steal like that. He also apologizes and claims they're keeping an eye on the child, but can't seem to change his habits. And if they are still angry, then let them take him away and do whatever they want with him. They can at least punish him or use him as a slave, because it was his own decision. But the young man then asks in shock what they said, because they themselves ordered him to do this. They also said that they would return his thing to him and give him bread if he did everything as they said, but the man asked when he said that and what kind of nonsense the guy was talking about, after which he pushes the guy away completely. And the main character wonders what they're doing to the child and tells them to stop. She doesn't think they're real parents, but rather villains, who lure children into difficult situations and then exploit them. The girl then says that they said that they did nothing wrong and why beat a child who has nothing to do with them, but the man only pushes the young lady, and he asks what she's barking about. The maid immediately runs up to her mistress and asks if she's okay, and whether they should call a doctor or a carriage. After which they all look angrily, but this man only gets scared and then says that it's time for them to run. But the maid screams for Sir Ryan to grab them, after which the man runs after them, and the maid turns to the mistress and asks if she can get up. The young lady replies that of course, and she didn't like it at all, after which she asks if Damien will help her. The young woman also turns to the boy and tells him to wait, then hands him the bracelet and claims to be returning it to him. The boy then asks, shocked, how she found it. The girl replies that earlier, when she grabbed the man's pants, the item fell out by accident. Damien then tells Ellie to be careful, as the young lady claims the guy had to cooperate with those people because they took this bracelet from him, and she understands the situation, but next time let him not engage in theft because it was noticeable due to the lack of skills. The young man then thanks her and asserts that this is a memory of his parents, so he will certainly repay this favor. Then his stomach rumbles, and the young lady asks if he wants anything to eat. A short time later, the boy is standing with loaves of bread and thanking her for returning his bracelet and buying bread and milk for his younger siblings. He also claims to live nearby in the Maripe shelter. And if they need his help in the future, let her come anytime, because he'll definitely help them. The young lady then thinks he's quite independent for a child, and then says she's fine. But when the guy says that his name is Grace, the young lady is shocked and realizes that although it is a common name, the new one in this novel is the one who risked his life for the main character Isabel, and he is the Holy Knight of Grace. So the girl thinks that maybe this child is the same Grace. Their main character understands that, of course, this isn't the best time to say something like that, but he's handsome, and they say Grace's Holy Knight was a woman. At this time, the guy asks if there is something on his face, and the main character says that no, he is just handsome, and after that, the young man asks if this is true and thanks her. He also says that she's very beautiful too, but when he sees Damien glaring at him, he says that, on second thought, he should have simply thanked her. After which the young man moves away a little from the main character, realizing that Damien must be embarrassed by Grace, but given the guy's past, this is natural. After which the main character turns to Sir Ryan and asks if he caught them, to which the man agrees, and when he looks at the young lady, she gives him a like. At this point, the maid runs up to her mistress and asks if she's hurt. She didn't know what exactly she hurt, so she prepared various medicines. The main character then wonders if it was possible that she'd been in contact with Grace in that short time. The maid went and bought all this, after which she thanked her and insisted that she was indeed fine, saying that thank God she wasn't hurt too badly. Another maid then suggested going to the carriage to see if she could walk around for long with the injuries. Something would definitely hurt. She then turns to Sir Ryan and tells him to take the children, after which he apologizes and lifts the two into his arms. The maid also says that he should send the scoundrels he caught on another carriage, and the main character wonders if they're already returning. After all, she hasn't bought any gifts yet, after which the girl turns to Ivana, Ashel, and May, and also claims that she hasn't walked around the entire market yet and asks if it's possible to stay for a little while longer. The girl also claims that she will sit quietly in Sir Ryan's arms and, if something hurts, she will immediately return to the carriage, after which the young lady asks if they agree. And the maids, blinded by the young lady's smile, say that then she needs to be careful, and one of them asserts that they will go with the other knights and deal with the captured gang. The young man is still watching them and realizes that this is a child from a noble family. He's even envious. The main character hands him some medicine and says they'll see each other again. And also, nothing hurts her, so she gives him these medicines, after which the girl says goodbye, and also understands that in the future her situation will be different from the previous one, but nevertheless, she asks him to take care of Damien. At this time, the Duke is in his office, and the man then tells him that the new sword has already been made, after which he places it on the table. And the Duke, looking him over, asserts that, as expected, his skills have not rusted.